It almost sounds like you're going through not your mic. Like, are you sure we're not going through your headphone mic or?
Oh man.
Because Skype does kind of mess around with the mic and the headphones, especially if you use headphones that have a mic. Is this
different?
It's way better.
Yeah,
Whoa!
I'm so
my
sorry.
God.
I'm
You're
so
in my
sorry.
ears.
I'm so sorry. Wow.
So how long were you a sound editor for? Like,
Oh no.
I knew that was gonna fucking do that. I fucking knew that. Hey, are you the guy who likes watching movies in the bathtub, or is
that's me. Yeah,
That's you?
I do my best work in the tub.
I don't know if you can talk about my sound editing experience with fucking Waterworld as your CV.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Invincible podcast, probably the best superhero podcast in the universe. This is a show where friends get to talk all things Invincible, a comic book and soon-to-be animated series by Robert Kirkman, Corey Walker, and Ryan Ottley. I am one of your hosts, Ryan, and joining me today is Bill.
Hi everyone.
And TJ.
Oh, hello, it's TJ.
You know, I had an
second.
you know what? I had an opportunity there because we redid this to put you first, and I still didn't. I don't know why.
I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, he's gonna fucking do it. He's gonna put me second.
No, I should have though. Bill, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, guys.
Yeah. TJ?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
I have a story.
You got a story. What is it?
I do have a story.
What? Do share.
Guess what I got over Thanksgiving weekend?
I don't know.
The coronavirus.
Did you really?
I did.
Oh my God.
Did you really?
Yeah.
No way. How are you?
What happened?
I'm actually really good. I'll tell the story so that people understand that no matter how cautious you are, like everybody's still at risk. So let me tell the story. It's kind of a long story, but I'll speed through it. So ever since it started getting really bad again in our area, like we went back to recording on Skype again. Like I haven't seen you guys in months. Like I literally just go to work and I come home and that's it. That's all I've been doing. But on Thanksgiving Day, I went to my parents' house did Thanksgiving with my parents, my sister, and her two kids. That's it. And I go over there. My dad is hacking and coughing and sneezing. They get a phone call. My parents get a phone call Thanksgiving morning from a friend of theirs saying, hey, basically saying that a mutual friend of theirs tested positive. My dad hangs up the phone and tells me, we were just with him last week at the get-together. And I'm like, the get-together? How many people were at the get-together? He says 19 fucking people.
Oh my God.
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
are you insane? I'm like, I was with you all day yesterday and today. And my sister's there and the kids are there and everything. Like, we're all there. Like, me and my dad, like, argued all weekend telling him, you got to get tested. Like, he was a wreck. Like, he didn't look good. He was sneezing. Like, it was bad. Finally, Saturday morning, he agreed to do it if we all did it with him. So I was like, screw it. If you got it, I'm sure I have it too. So I'll just go and get tested even though I felt fine. So Saturday I get tested. We all get tested. Sunday we record with Kyle Higgins, which you're all about to hear. And then I sit down to watch football and my whole body starts to ache. Sure enough, I wake up the next morning and I can't get out of bed. My dad calls me and he goes, your sister has all the same symptoms. I'm like, well, there you go.
Yep.
Later on, sure enough, I get the results and I'm positive. Jesus. So it actually, luckily, I will say this though, it's been perfectly fine. I've been fine. It feels like a slight cold. The most annoying thing that's happened to me is I've completely lost my sense of taste and smell, and not like you do when you get a cold or when you're stuffed up. Like it is fucking gone, and I can't smell anything or taste anything.
And you don't sound that nasal either, so it's not from you plugging your nose. It's just like gone. Like it takes it away. That's crazy.
Monday when I woke up, my whole body was aching and I had trouble getting out of bed. But since then, it hasn't really been bad at all. I've gotten lucky. I know it can affect different people differently, but basically this just goes to show that no matter how cautious you are, all it takes is one person who isn't, and my whole family has it. Me and my mom, my sister, the kids have it.
Wow. So I have not as intense a story as that. Not that that's intense. So I mean, it's just I guess to your point, TJ, it just goes to show, like, if you've been sick, we've all been really, really sick before. You know what I mean? Like, I've been so sick where I can't get out of bed, and it wasn't the coronavirus. But anyways, so back in last January, 2020, so my sister went to New York City, came back, was so sick that she almost, like, was going to die. You know what I mean? Like, very, very ill. So she got better. This was before, like, coronavirus blew up. This was in January.
Yeah.
So she got sick, and then my dad kind of got sick. And my sister's currently staying with my parents for the past, like, year and a half. And then my mom, I remember this story vividly. They were at JCPenney. My mom got so sick she threw up in a shoebox at JCPenney.
Oh.
Like, she couldn't hold it. She just threw up in a shoebox.
Jesus.
And TJ, I laughed that hard too. It was funny. Long story short, Stephanie got the antibody test a few months ago, and she had the antibodies in her blood. And they said the time frame with as many as you've had in your blood right now, it's like a few months back, which would have been January. So it's when she had it, she was that sick.
That's crazy.
My dad just got blood work done, and he has the fucking antibodies. So I don't remember seeing my family around that time. I'm sure I did at one point, but I mean, from January to now, I have at one point been like, oh, I feel like, I have like a little bit of this and that, but
that's the thing.
Nothing crazy. So
it's weird to think that you might have had it and been asymptomatic, or you just thought it was something like a feeling down that day.
Exactly.
Drip,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm sick. Like, I feel kind of sick, but it's like we live in Buffalo, New York, where winters can be brutal. It's like Buffalo, New York sick. Like, it's where, like, I don't feel sick enough to where I would stay home on a normal day.
I want to make it clear that we are in no way downplaying this. Like TJ said, he feels lucky that, this could absolutely,
That's what I'm saying, though. Like,
this could be dangerous.
It affects everybody different. Bill could have had it and been asymptomatic. I'm like, I feel it, but like I said, like, the fact that I would go to work right now, if there wasn't like a COVID thing, like, people need to be aware. Like, if you're even a little sick, you should like take precaution. And not only that, but like, it hit my dad bad. Like, he's good and everything. He's not like scared for his life or anything like that. It's not that bad. It could be a lot worse, but it affects everybody differently.
Yep. My uncle got tested positive a week and a half ago. He almost went to the hospital. It was that bad. Again, his whole family in his house now. It's gone through. It's one of those things that when this first started happening, Bill, I remember talking to you about it when it was a lot of unknowns and it was, extra scary about like, how bad is this thing? And then you start hearing like, a friend of mine knows somebody that got tested positive for this. And then it started to feel like that early zombie movie kind of thing where it's like all of a sudden, and now here we are. You know what I mean?
It's everywhere.
It's crazy.
So TJ, you have it. My sister, my family had it. My across the street neighbor, I'm not going to be specific. He or she may have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or has it right now.
Yep. It's gone through. So it's gone through my immediate family and it's gone through my place of work. Luckily, my wife and I have been fine. But I've definitely gotten tested several times, and luckily in New York, it's pretty easy to get tested. So, scary stuff, man. It's crazy. But we should talk about Invincible.
Let's segue.
We are the Invincible Podcast, and I swear we do talk a lot about Invincible. You can email us at theinvinciblepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us over on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. You can check out the website. It's theinvinciblepodcast.com. There is a handy reading guide there, a contact form, as well as access to all the episodes. We are also the Oblivion Song Podcast. That is also a monthly show that comes out the Friday after every issue of Oblivion Song. What's up next, TJ?
For Oblivion Song?
Yep.
Issue 29 comes out on the 16th.
Holy shit! It's going to be a crazy issue.
It is going to be a crazy issue. And
so we might be recording on my birthday.
Yeah, we'll probably record that Thursday, and then the next episode of the Oblivion Song Podcast will come out on the 18th. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's
very cool.
Excellent.
So we have a pretty long episode here, as you might be able to see. So we're going to get right into it. First up, I want to talk about some Invincible news. The local comic shop day issue came out. This was a cool surprise. I mean, we knew a little bit. In fact, I want to say maybe even last episode, we talked a little bit about this issue coming out and our theories on what cover it was going to be. Because we're like, okay, we know it's gold foil cover. And we're like, all right, is it going to be the original cover, or is it going to be the Free Comic Book Day cover with the animated series style artwork? And we were all wrong. To a degree, it is the animated series artwork. What's that, Bill?
TJ, what were we?
You were so wrong.
Little Prometheus trailer.
Oh yes, good trailer.
We were so wrong. So good.
Awesome cover though. This issue has this great background. So again, it's Invincible in the new animated style artwork, doing his classic pose, but the background and the back of the issue is all just covers from across the series, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's neat that it's a
awesome.
completely new issue, and of course the gold foil lettering on the title is awesome. Skybound has also done another vault sale this past week. On it, Sean Kirkman mentioned that there might be some merch in the pipeline in relation to the Invincible animated series, which is also very exciting. Which is not that surprising, of course. I mean, you'd think that they'd be doing something for the show, but the fact just hearing about it's exciting. There is another Skybound Expo that's December 8th, so that should be a week or so from when you hear this. Less. Only a few days, actually. No panels or anything announced for that yet, right, TJ?
Not that I've seen, no.
Yeah, they did say like, okay, comics, games, and all this kind of stuff that's going to be there, and I believe there's going to be another vault sale, and that's the 8th. Speaking of panels, though, there is a Amazon Prime panel at the Brazil Comic Con this Saturday. So if you're hearing this on the day this came out or shortly after, it's pretty soon. So the Amazon Prime panel did announce that that Invincible would be a part of it, as you know, along with The Expanse and other Amazon Prime shows. So odds are it's just going to be a small segment of the panel. Do you guys have any expectations or predictions for this?
I feel like it is going to be just the trailer in a dubbed language.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
I don't think it's. I definitely don't think we're gonna get like a clip or a scene. I think that if they were to show something like that, it would be in.
Where is it at?
The U.S.
Brazil. But again, it is a pretty big looking convention. I mean, digital convention. They've got a lot of big panels and everything. So I'm not sure. But again, like Skybound and everybody hasn't really been talking much about it. So I'm kind of expecting them to show off the trailer, which again is always good. Just, you know, widening the reach. If anything else, because again, the wording is weird. It says like, oh, featuring Robert Kirkman and J.K. Simmons. But again, is that saying that
they'll be on the panel?
That they're on the panel, or that it's created and by them and starring them? You know what I mean? Like sometimes they get really, you know, tricky with their wording. Yeah, I don't think so either. But
I think it's just going to be Invincible in Portuguese.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's a thing. So obviously we'll be talking about it on Twitter if anything comes out of that. The last thing I want to bring up is, and I don't think this had happened as of last month's episode, but Robert Kirkman was on Robservations, the Rob Liefeld podcast. Did either of you get a chance to listen to that yet?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it really good?
It was. It was really good.
I loved it. I mean, really cool hearing the two of them talk, just, you know, casual, friendly conversation. Robert Kirkman goes into some really interesting stuff regarding his time at Marvel. They do talk a little bit about Invincible. Rob Liefeld seems like a big fan of it, and, you know, talking about how, you know, Kirkman had once shown him some early scenes from the animated series, and he asked Kirkman about writing for it. Kirkman, again, you know, mentioned that he wrote the premiere and finale, which again, for some reason, I thought he just wrote the premiere. I don't think that's news. I just must have forgotten about it, but it's just still really exciting to know that he did the premiere and the finale. Rob asked if there was a date for the show, and Kirkman said that there is, but he can't say it yet, just because they're building hype and everything, and he says that he feels as though it'll be known fairly soon. So we'll see about that.
I think that makes me think that it's going to be very soon.
The series.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not going to release the date and have it not come out. At least 30 days, or at the most 30 days after when they announce the date.
Really?
You're saying that it would be within the 30 days or after the 30 days? Within the 30 days.
Within no later. So if they announce it like January 1st, it's going to premiere March 1st. Something along those lines.
I think it's going to be much sooner than that from the announced date. Much sooner.
Then I'm going to be later than both of you. I'm going to say minimum 30, maximum 60. So I'd say it's not coming out within the first 30 days, but will definitely be within the 30 after.
We're probably in the same area.
I think I'm going
like first 2 weeks.
No.
I'd say like 8 months.
I think Ryan, you and I agree. I would say like a month to 1 to 2 months
from when they announce the date.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think too. Like, okay. I'm not saying it's like they're gonna announce the date and then tomorrow, be a week later. I'm saying it's going to be a month after they announce it.
Okay, then yeah, we're all in the same boat here. The other thing that they joked a little bit about, bringing Invincible back in comic book form, and Kirkman joked a little bit about that, as well as mentioning that he misses writing Invincible tremendously.
Yeah, don't play with our heartstrings, bro. Come on now.
Oh, you screwed up, Kirkman. Ended it all.
I like to think that he's written issue 145 or other things and just been like, all right, just to kind of get it out of his system a little bit, and then like maybe go back to that and like tweak it a bit, and just so it's there and ready, just in case he decides to.
There's something about I really feel strongly about him going back to writing it. I really think that after the show premieres and it does really well, he's gonna like have that itch.
Yeah. Kind of like how like he said that he said that before, that he's like, I'm not done. I haven't finished. What was the quote, Ryan, where he said like, I haven't written my last page of Invincible or something?
It was something like that. I mean, it was basically... It was
something along the lines of, he wasn't alluding to the fact that the story isn't done, because the story is done. But he's basically saying, like, he's going to come back to it in one sense or another eventually, sometime before he dies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that does it for Invincible-related news. We're going to...
I don't think so, Ryan.
Why?
I don't think so.
What
I think there's one more little tidbit of news. But it's not Invincible-related.
Okay.
It's Invincible podcast-related.
And what's that?
We've made it. We have made it. We surpassed 1,000 followers.
We did
on Twitter.
We did.
Yeah.
Congrats to us.
So congratulations, guys. That's a huge thing.
That is pretty cool.
I don't even know 1,000 people, so I know that it's just not like my mom, my friends, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we got as many people as we could early on. It's definitely not them anymore. So thank you. I mean, for anyone that is following us over on Twitter, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Neat little milestone there. So yes, let's get into this interview, this long interview. This was, we had Kyle Higgins, comic book writer, director, on the podcast to talk to us all about his new comic coming out, Radiant Black.
Can I say like a quick thing?
Yeah.
We recorded with Kyle Higgins. We had such a good time recording with him that we recorded for 5 hours. I think this interview was like 2 hours long, but like we recorded for 5 hours. So like, if you think this is long, like literally it was like all our whole day Sunday, but it was that much fun. We none of us wanted to hang up with him.
Yeah, we had a great time. You might know his work from Power Rangers or Ultraman, which is out now. But like I said, or Nightwing, Batman. Yeah. So we talk a bit about Radiant Black. In fact, I think we talk a little bit about Radiant Black before actually talking about what Radiant Black is. So hang in there. We realize after several minutes, oh wait, let's talk about what this comic actually is. But we just got right into it, and the influence that Invincible had, and the connections with Invincible, and he's got some great stories. So we had an absolute blast. I'm going to shut up now so we can get to the interview. And we'll be back after this to talk about some other stuff that we've been up to. Welcome, Kyle Higgins, to the Invincible podcast.
How's it going, boys? How are
Great.
you? Nice to meet you all.
It's going very good. Thank you
as
so
well,
much.
sir.
It's weird to put faces to voices, but I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard that. So,
Yeah, that's how
and
it
with
goes.
faces like these, it's a very pleasant experience. There you go.
Oh,
See, I took that in a
thank
different
you.
direction.
Well, that's a first. Thank you.
I do like your selectively blurred background, Bill.
yeah, it's
So-
intentional.
That's actually a natural blur effect because it's just a very bright light behind me. So that's just a window.
Are you your depth of field is that shallow? What do you do? What are you filming on? What are you shooting on?
Just an iPad.
No, you definitely
wow.
have the background blur going.
That's
you
a-
have one.
You have a filter on for sure.
You have a
Do
filter
I?
on, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Bill, you want to talk to me about microphones?
I don't even know where the microphone is on these headphones. It's like magic to me. I don't know. I don't have anything in front of me. So.
Oh, are those the Sonys or what are those?
Yeah, they're the.
Oh, yeah. Those are nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You totally have a background on because your wire is blurring.
Mhm.
A portion of your wire is blurring.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Great stuff for audio podcast. Yeah. Just imagine just Vaseline all around Bill. I mean, it's just
But not in a creepy way.
All right, I'm gonna work on the next hour to try to get this filter off, so I seem like I know what I'm doing. You guys go ahead and talk about cool stuff.
so all right. So I gotta get this out of the way. I mean, it's been several months. I mean, you reached out to us a while ago. We're the Invincible podcast. What does that have to do
Right.
with Radiant Black? I mean, why are you here? What is the
Well,
point?
yeah. Well, I guess to start at the beginning, I'm not a fan of things anymore. Like that part of me died at some point, and I don't remember when. I'm not aware of it, but I am aware. I wasn't aware of it happening, but I'm aware of it now. Like the things that I'm still like a really big like diehard fan of, I can count on one hand. It's like the Chicago Bears, anything related to Batman the Animated Series, things like that. But comic books in general, especially superhero comics, are something that I have loved for like my entire life, and yet I feel like I very much kind of fell out of love with them. And that is in large part, I think, because I've been writing superhero comics, like full time for the last about 10 years now. And you go through weird ebbs and flows and politics and jobs that didn't work out or that worked out but not the way you wanted them to, or things you're really proud of, and then other things that you wish you could have back. And then, like I said, like there can be jealousy over like, well, why didn't I get that job? Or why didn't they keep this run I was doing going longer? Or, it's anytime you see how the sausage is made, like it's hard to have that kind of like unabashed like excitement for the material. And in general, I actually have found like I realized kind of at the end of 2019, it was like, oh, wow, I'm really not actually reading that many comics anymore either. Now that all, what's strange about that statement is that I still love making them, like I got started making comics because of a film I directed, and directing is really like my first love. But comics, when the opportunities presented themselves, it was like, or the opportunity presented itself, it was actually with Marvel. I was like right out of college, and I was like, well, yeah, I'll pitch some stories, and then it just kind of turned into this thing, and then they offer you Batman, and no one says no to Batman. So then you blink, and all these years go by, and whatever. Like I love making them. I love telling stories. I love the format and the medium, and I say that, and I will bring these two things back together. But basically, we started building out Radiant Black about a year, well, in earnest, in a like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It was probably just a little over a year ago. It had been a slightly different idea before that, but it really coalesced about a year ago. And that also coincided with, like, as we'll get to here, like, look, I mean, like, there's a lot of, the book's not about me, but there's a lot of me in the book. And, you know, one of the things that I decided I was gonna change coming into 2020 was trying to find some books to just fall in love with again, comic book wise, and especially superheroes if I could. You know, I was starting to pick up Hickman's X-Men stuff, and I was really enjoying it, just because it was the first time I was like, oh, you know, like every week or every other week, it's like, oh, I want to make sure I pick that up across titles, you know.
Yeah.
And like I had some friends in the industry. I have some friends in the industry that, like, we would text because we were picking it. We were all of us. Like, that's the thing. When Jonathan went to do X-Men, like, it was like
I did the same thing with that run.
Yeah,
it had been forever since I had read X-Men, and then I jumped in for that one.
Same. And like, it was kind of like not the worst kept secret in comics, but like everyone knew he was doing X-Men because it had been in the works for a long time. And so there was like this palpable, like, well, what's he going to do that we all kind of felt. And so there were a number of us, like I said, that would like, we were like texting about it. And it was like, oh, wow, I remember what this felt like, you know, when I was doing this more consistently, reading and just a fan of things, you know. And and so then, you know, come February, I want to say it was February, yeah, I went back to Chicago for C2E2. And that was the last. Well, I did one more convention after that before the world ended. But I went back to Chicago for C2E2. They announced Ultraman there. I was working on Radiant Black. And I was reminded of the fact that I had never read Invincible. And I had the first hardcover from years ago that one of my friends at Skybound gave me. And I'd started it. I liked it. You know, I read like the first couple issues, but like I knew it's like, okay, this is something I really want to, like, you know, I really want to read properly one day. And actually Ryan Parrott, who writes all the Power Rangers books now, he was the one who turned me on to it like 10 to 12 years ago. He was like, dude, it's so good. Like, you got to read this book. And so when I came back from C2E2, there was like a 2-week period before I went to Mexico City for this convention that then I got not stuck in Mexico City, but basically everything in Los Angeles and the U.S. shut down while we were in Mexico City. And so it was like David Finch, Mark Silvestri, and myself, like, having lunch together each day or in the van together, driving back to the hotel, going like, are we gonna be able to get back home? You know? And Dave in particular lives in Canada. So it was like he had to cross 2 borders. And so anyway, but during those 2 weeks right before I went to Mexico City, I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get the rest of these hardcovers. And I reached back out to Skybound and was able to get kind of an order in, and the boxes showed up as I was heading to Mexico City of the other 11 hardcovers. Right. And so when then the world ends and shuts down, I come back from Mexico City, and it's like flying into this crazy, like, dystopian, like, future where everything has been shuttered. You know, it was also raining one of the few times, right? So it had this extra creepy, eerie vibe. And it was like, stay home, don't go anywhere. I mean, you guys obviously lived through this as well. And so I was just like sitting here, and I was like, well, I have 12 hardcovers of Invincible now, and I'm going to read them.
Yeah.
And so I read the whole run in quarantine. And, you know, Eric Stevenson, who's the publisher of Image and the chief creative officer, is you know, I would definitely consider a friend at this point. And so, you know, we would be texting about Invincible because I knew he had been involved early on, and also he and Robert are really close, and he really likes the book as well. And so I would be texting him about the book. It was like, oh, this was amazing, or I loved this, you know. And I've known Robert for years, but like, I gave him a hard time once because I don't think he's ever responded to an email ever. But like to the point where I asked Eric, I was like, hey, do I have the right email for Robert? But what I didn't know was that Eric was passing on to Robert what I was saying, reading it for the first time. And one of the points was like, it feels so, I can't articulate how great it feels to just be a fan of something again, like unabashed fandom. And it really reminded me why I love superheroes so much. And the irony is that the DNA of Radiant Black was there before I ever read Invincible. But then reading Invincible, it was so enlightening and inspiring because it was showing me like, hey, what I want to do can be done. Because this book did it. I mean, did it 15 years ago as far as when it started. So some of the touchstones and some of the different aspects of just the world when you're doing something that's really contemporary, some of those things don't age as well. But then it was also like a massive relief because I was like, well, I was going to do a few things that Robert did way better, and we'll not be doing those. Going forward. Mm-hmm. But just in general, it was just so great and such a great way to pass. Like, I mean, it was really only like 2 months. I read, I think 144 issues in 2 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And so then I found your guys' podcast actually through, I think either Sean Kirkham at Skybound or the Skybound, Twitter account just in general, retweeting you guys at one point. So then I followed you, and then I guess Ryan, you followed me back, and I was listening to episodes like as I was driving around, and I was like jumping around in order as well. Like I started at the beginning, but then I really wanted to hear the Robert, finale once I finished the book, so I just reached out, and to me, and that's something that I'm hoping to capture a little bit with Radiant Black, and then I'll shut. Can I swear on this podcast? Do we?
Fuck yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's like something I'm trying to capture with Radiant Black, and then I swear I'll shut the fuck up because I know I tend to rant. This is why I need an editor. But it was just like the fact that there's a podcast, the fact that you guys kept up with it as much as you did, the fact that like even I could like shoot you a message and be like, dude, I just read this issue. Look how amazing that was. That to me is so much of what the magic of comics when done right is that they can foster, inspire, and really nurture a community. Mm-hmm. And so many of the things that we're looking to do in Radiant Black that we haven't even announced yet or talked about yet, as far as like back matter content and things like that, all of that has been thought out from the standpoint of like, we want this to be something, we want this to be a world and a reading experience that you look forward to each month, and you look forward to engaging with the creators or with other fans or other readers, whether it's through the letters column, which I love letters columns for that reason, or it's through social media, or I'll just tell you right here and now, like the Radiant Black social media account is also going to be in universe. So
Wait, what does that mean?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Huh.
So that's how I think we ended up here. Because at a certain point, I also sent you the first 2 issues of Radiant Black, going like, hey, since you like Invincible, you might like this. And the last caveat I want to add to that kind of like whole preamble story is that Robert did email me back at a certain point, because I got to a point where Eric actually told me, he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I've been telling Robert, like when you send stuff, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And he's like, it's like super cool that he thinks he really loves that you're enjoying it. And I was like, I don't know that, like, we've known each other for a long time, but like just socially, I was like, I don't know that he's ever actually written back to an email. Like, is this actually his account? And Eric's like, oh yeah, he mentioned that. Like, he keeps meaning, he feels bad because he keeps meaning to write you back, and then he's only running a million high pressure things at the moment. And so I got to a moment in the book, and I don't want to tell you what it was. I'll tell you off air. But I took a screenshot and I emailed Robert and I just said, "You sick bastard, I love it." And he,
you mean
and he
in
wrote
Invincible?
Back, yes.
Oh no, we spoil Invincible.
No, no. I know. I'm saying I don't want to say
got
it
it.
Was because of Robert's response. It was very funny. But I'll tell you off air. And anyway, so he wrote back and then he was like, "Hey, yeah, sorry I haven't emailed you, but like this is awesome that you loved it. I can't wait to hear what you think of the ending." And so I wrote him a big email at the end of it all. And at that point, he had the first issue of Radiant Black as well. And he's like, "I can't wait to read this." He's like, "Eric sent this along. I can't wait to read it." He's like, "That cover's great." And then fast forward all these months, and like we're putting together this promo poster for Radiant Black, and we're like locking it that day, like on a Monday morning. And my friend Scott Snyder sent me a blurb to use like in the 11th hour, and so we were having all these emails with Image back and forth, like trying to lock these pull quotes. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." They're like, "Yeah, we got to use that." I was like, "Okay, well, sorry, so-and-so, we're bumping, we had to bump so-and-so. I'm not going to say we had to bump so-and-so off the poster." And then all of a sudden I was looking at my phone. I was like dealing with something else. And I see this email from a Robert. I was like, "Robert? I don't know Robert. Like I know a Robin. What Robert?" And then and I looked at it, and it was Robert emailing me like the greatest pull quote of all time, like just out of nowhere. Like on the day that the poster is due, and I sent it, and he doesn't know that we're doing a poster or anything, and he really liked it, and he was really, really supportive, and I just want to like go on record, like right, like from the get go, and say like, I do think there's definitely some DNA shared between the two books, and I think that's important to say because it just shows how fucking awesome Robert is, like just as a person. Because he did not need to do that. And I know other creators who would absolutely have ignored the book outright. Because they're like, "Oh, it's kind of similar to something I did. Like, fuck you." Like, I know creators that I have had creators do that to me. And not necessarily with Radiant Black, but just like in my career. And the fact that Robert was like, "Hey, this is great. Here's a quote. Use it however you want. And also, like, I'm just going to give you this line, like, for anyone who loved Invincible." And it's like that you did not need to do that. That is so above and beyond. And I was very, very appreciative. So,
yeah. I mean, all right. Who else goes first? I do too. Hold on.
So I have about 20 minutes to kill right now, and I'm going to start right now.
Go.
No, I'm kidding.
What do you mean to kill?
I meant
oh,
to
yeah,
go,
yeah.
So that was
I'll one up you. Like, just we can keep doing this. I don't know how much recording space you have on your hard drive, but
I think we ask a lot of fans. I think it's the number one question we ask is, how did you get into Invincible? And that is, I mean, one of, if not the most intricately told and interesting. Like, I think finding Invincible during the quarantine when you're away
I tell
from
stories
home
for a living, right? Like,
but I'm not blowing smoke.
It's funny,
like, saying, like,
as you were telling the story and how you brought it back to like, it's good to be a fan again. I'm like, yeah, he's a writer.
yeah. But so anyways, I just really quick, a point I want to make is that I think the shared tone and the shared like kind of things that you may pull from Invincible, I think that what's nice about it is that it's not obvious. Like I like Radiant Black, and I truly do. We've read the first two issues, and I think that it's fantastic. Is that it just makes you feel it's very digestible in a great way. And that's what Invincible does. Like, and what's weird is that what I like about it is the dialogue between like the friends and the family, like the real life dialogue. And you've listened to the podcast, so you know like my fucking love for Tara. I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just because it's so real, and it's like if you can capture that tone, you can easily read a comic book. Because to your point too, Kyle, like I'm out of the three of us, me, TJ, and Ryan, I read the least amount because to you, like I don't know what it is, but I just kind of fell out of like, oh, I need to pick up this comic book. I need to pick up this comic book. Like if it doesn't capture me within the first page or two, I'm not interested in it. And I think like a couple things in the like the last couple months or the last year, I would say is fucking Curse of the White Knight and White. Did you read that?
No, but that's one because what you know how that's the Sean Murphy book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so remember how I just said like something will come out and you'll just be like you'll be jealous?
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
I love Sean. I'm super jealous of that book. That book launched the same time I was doing Nightwing: The New Order, and we were supposed to have a 12-issue maxi series with cardstock covers and everything. And Mr. Miracle got it, and White Knight got it, and we got 6 issues without cardstock. And so there's like, and here's the thing, everything I'm describing here, I know that's incredible. That's me. That's very it's petty. It's like that is a book that is probably great. I can't enjoy it because I'm in the weeds.
Yeah.
I know the emails, not on that book, but I just know and there's a little bit of like fuck that shit, like because you feel jealous. Like I totally can own that, you know what I mean? And Sean's an amazing creator, like, and so like I'm very happy for him. It also, you know, he riffs on a lot of the touch points that I love as well. The
animated series
stuff,
bro.
Yeah, so
that's what I was gonna bring it back to, is like when he and Michael Keaton Batman, like there's things in there and I just closed the book and I was like, oh my fucking god.
But that's why I can't.
Yeah.
That's why I can't, because it's like, oh, I would kill to do this. I would absolutely kill to do this, and to know like, whatever, it's fine. I'm happy for it.
I fucking love how candid you are about that shit too, because there's a lot of like, I feel like a lot of comic book creators and writers will be like, oh yes, I've read his work and it's all great, and you're just like, no, fuck that, I can't. I feel too jealous. Like
there are certain creators that like I will absolutely clam up about if you ask me, because there's like some deep wound there that I'm not going to talk about publicly.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean.
So how did Invincible keep you reading? You know, I mean, was there a moment in Invincible that, well, first of all, you read the first volume and then you put it aside for a little while, and when you went back, was there a moment when you were like, okay, this is something special, this is something different, and then was there a moment where it was like, shit, you know, like this is really good?
Well, okay, so that's a great question. I have a weird answer to that though, because the things that really excite me are things that I feel like a lot of readers wouldn't care about or wouldn't necessarily be looking for. So I guess what I'm trying to... Okay, here's the best way I can describe it. You know when you hear about comedians playing to the back of the room?
Yeah.
Have you heard that phrase before?
I think so.
What it means is like what they're doing in their stand-up, in the joke that they're telling, is something that is above and beyond what the audience might appreciate, but the other comedians who are standing in the back of the room listening, it's really for them. And that's frowned upon a lot of times because it's kind of pretentious. And also it's like you're trying to make people laugh. You're not trying to be like beloved by your fellow, you know, contemporaries. But although I would argue that most creators have that aspect in them as well. It's what I just was talking about from the jealousy standpoint, right? The things in Invincible that pulled me in, and the fact that I set it aside, I don't even remember how many years ago that was, probably 6-7 years ago.
Wow.
It is not an indictment on the fact, like I've heard you guys talk before about how like the Omni-Man reversal or twist at issue, what is it, 7, 8 that he did it?
Yeah.
He kills them in 7.
Yeah. The twist in 7 is the thing that people are like, oh wow, you know, and I totally I agree, but at the same time, I have a little bit of a different perspective because I knew there were 144 issues of this fucking book, and I know people love this book. So there's a long runway I'm going to give a book like that. If I'm committed to like, I'm going to read this run that everyone talks about, and I know it lasted long enough to that point with the same art team, like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to read at least, you know, 30 some issues. So I was committed anyway. The stuff that pulled me in, and then weirdly, it was like the technical stuff that was for me playing to the back of the room. And I can describe that in a second. That's the stuff that made me smile. And then like I lowered my guard because I was able to go like, this is really good. Like on a technical level, this is really, really well made. And I mean, the number of comics I read where I'm counting panels per page as I'm reading, it means I'm not I'm not engaged, like something's bumping for me or something's, but at a certain point because I was able to recognize very quickly, like, oh, this is really good. It did something for me where I lowered that kind of little bit of cynicism guard. And then I was able to just kind of like, just go along for the ride.
Be a fan of it.
Exactly.
That's fucking awesome. Yeah.
And so those little things, though, I am obsessive about when I write or I work because I've worked in video games. I've worked. I haven't really done much TV. I've done a little bit. I write features, like I write comics. I direct. Whatever medium you're working in, you need to play to the strengths of that medium. So like on my Batman Beyond run, and I do this in a lot of comics. I really like doing villains that have sound based powers.
Like Shriek.
Like Shriek.
Fuck yeah, man.
So in the Batman Beyond run, Shriek is in my comic in particular. We did things where he like makes Terry go deaf at a certain point.
Yeah.
And so we just did these balloons that were empty.
Cool.
So good. I fucking remember reading that, dude, and it was so fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that was
man.
awesome.
And so like that's a gag you can only do in a comic. I have this villain in Cowl named Doppler who reworks sound into different types of energy. So someone crinkles up a newspaper, and that crinkle sound effect, Rod Reese warps and distorts into an explosive, concussive force, right? A character is running, and the clop, clop, clop sound effect, Rod took it, and he took the O from the clop and wrapped it around the guy's ankle to trip him. Huh. And then later, at a certain point, a character says, "Oh, thank God." And Doppler reaches into the word balloon and grabs the letter D and hits the character in the face with it.
That's fucking awesome.
It's again, like...
And it's not the same. I mean, it's a little different, but you did a really awesome, audio gag in Power Rangers that we talked about, which I don't want to spoil because TJ's still reading it, but like, that was smart.
That's not the first time I've done that gag.
Yeah.
I did that gag in Batman Beyond at the end of the first chapter of Batman Beyond, where if you've watched the show, you're conditioned to think that the voice that you're hearing in Terry's earpiece, his Batman earpiece, is Bruce Wayne, because they did 3 seasons of that. And the twist at the end of my first chapter of Batman Beyond is that, that voice you've been hearing this whole first issue, it's actually Dick Grayson.
Dick Grayson.
Yeah.
So good.
It's a gag you can only do in comics because you don't have an audio performance for someone. You're playing off of people's expectations. So I love stuff like that. I'm also very obsessive and meticulous about my page turn reveals. A page turn reveal is the only true reveal you have in a comic, because whatever's on an even page is going to be on the left, and it'll usually, unless you're doing Marvel DC and they slot ads in weird places, which used to really frustrate me, but I've gotten over it over the years because I know in trade paperback it'll be collected properly. Yeah. But whatever's on the left-hand side is going to be a true reveal. Mm-hmm. Whatever's on the right, your eye is naturally going to kind of wander over and see. Mm-hmm. So if you can do it, it's best to do your big reveals on that actual page turn. Yeah. And Robert's really, really, really good at it. He also does things. He was also doing things where like characters would do something or say something and I wouldn't understand it. And then 2 pages later, a character would say something or do something and it would explain retroactively what I just saw 2 pages earlier that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. That's really, really hard to pull off. Hard to pull off.
So you did, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this is probably what you're talking about, but you did that short film, The Shadow Hour.
Yeah.
And it starts with him recording on that thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, what, like, is that just like part of his thing? And then you find out what he's actually doing, and I'm like, oh, it's fucking awesome. Like,
thank you.
Yeah,
that's the stuff that I really love. So when I see a book where a creator is in total command of it, of the medium, I'm like immediately sucked in, And again, like some of that is like playing to the back of the room, but then once I'm able to go like, oh no, they're really good. Yeah. It does something for me where it's like, it just lowers my cynicism, and I'm just like, I just want to enjoy this because I'm witnessing someone really, really great here. It's like you hear stories about the first time Jimi Hendrix played in London, I want to say, was like at a bar at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was like empty except for like Paul McCartney and a few people. Like, and this is in the 60s, right? And Paul, I don't know if Clapton was there or not, but Paul McCartney was definitely there. So like like Paul McCartney is hearing this guitar player goes, who's no one, and is like, yeah, he's really fucking good. Like that's the, that's the thing that like, I think we can recognize that as creators. Like when someone's really doing something special or really on their game, you're like, oh yeah, I'm here for it,
And
I think
go ahead, TJ.
I think that we can see that in Radiant Black too, because from your work, like going back to what we were talking about with the dialogue, whenever Nathan, the main character, talks to somebody else, like talks to a friend, it feels like Mark is talking to William. It has that same kind of feel. When he's talking to his father or stepfather, it feels like him talking to Omni-Man. It has all those same kind of feels, and like the action in it. It is very, like Kirkman says, if you like Invincible, like you're gonna like this book 100%.
And there is a flying gag in issue 1 that was
I saw that too.
By the way, total accident. Like I did it before I read Invincible, and then when I read Invincible, I smiled with William. I smiled and I was like, okay, that actually works. And you know what? I don't know which version you guys read, but
they got the updated one.
You got the updated one?
Yeah.
Because one of the cool things Robert also said in his email was like, there was a previous version of issue 1 that actually Kurt Busiek read and gave me a bunch of notes on, and they were great notes. And it was like, they were all lettering changes, but I had run into this problem where the main character was less interesting than the best friend in the first issue, and it was by design, based on where the main character was starting from. And we should probably explain what the setup of Rating.
Oh yeah, what is this comic we're talking about for half an hour now?
But before we do that, so I like I knew what he was talking about, and it was like, okay, if I can get more texture for Nathan, the main character, and be a little more specific in what his situation is. And I had a way to, I don't want to spoil too much here, but like I figured out, I was like, okay, I know how to do this. And one of the things I did was this flying moment. I added this word balloon burst. And Robert, in his email a few weeks ago, he was like, I even went back and checked this. I don't even think I told him that Kurt had given me, that there was a new version. I guess Eric must have. And he was like, I went back and read the pre-Kurt Busiek notes version as well. And he's like, and I like all the updated stuff, except for this one thing in the flying thing. And he was like, because if you do a balloon there, it feels real cavalier, as opposed to there might be some time that passes.
Passage of time.
And he was 1,000% right. And this is exactly what I was talking about. I mean, I had that thought. That's the crazy thing, is like, so, even when I added the balloon, I had the thought that it feels like it's a boom, 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 as opposed to like, oh, this could be like 30 seconds from now or a few minutes from now or whatever. And I thought, well, I think the excitement I get from the balloon outweighs the potential like offhandedness that it becomes, as a moment. And Robert, like a surgeon, like zeroed in on it immediately, and he was like, it's better without it because of this. Well, I guess maybe should I describe what this book is before we go any further?
Yeah.
Like, I guess if you're still listening, like you're fucking at this point. But
we'll make a point to before we insert this interview, we'll make a point to say that that we talk about what it is a little bit later in.
So Radiant Black is my new Image book, and it is it's coming out. We just announced it a week and a half ago, I want to say, and it'll be coming out February 10th, 2021, and it has been described as Power Rangers meets Invincible. I also saw a comp of like Green Lantern meets Spider-Man, which I was like, I mean, I guess, but isn't that just Kyle Rayner? I'm not sure. But it's I would describe it as it's a superhero book for right now, and it is it's very much in the kind of millennial spider archetype, with some of the more interstellar, cosmic, and soulful scope of like a Japanese tokusatsu series, like a Super Sentai or an Ultraman or a Kamen Rider. So it is definitely a Western superhero book, like, make no mistake, but I would say it has some kind of like tokusatsu flair. And the fact that I did Power Rangers for 3 years, like, I really built that book, that brand for Boom. And I did the first 30 some issues of that, plus Shattered Grid, plus I directed a live action promo for it, and then I also wrote the video game, and I helped coordinate, a live RPG game tied into the Shattered Grid event. And then from there, I'm doing Ultraman right now for Marvel. So like that kind of, kind of toku flair is something that I have a bit of experience with now. And again, to what we were just talking about a little while ago, as far as like finding things to be a fan of, like some of those series like Ultraman and some Kamen Rider and some Sentai as well, like those are things that I had never experienced before I got into before I was writing Power Rangers. I mean, I was aware of them for sure. And I knew since I was a kid that Power Rangers was utilizing Japanese footage for a lot of its action stuff, but I didn't have any interest in like trying to dive down that very deep rabbit hole. But now that I have, and I haven't really dove that deep, to be totally honest, but like the stuff I have watched and gotten into, like it's really, really cool to find stuff that is quite a bit different than what we kind of typically think of as superheroes here in America. And that's been really fun just as a fan again, So, anyway, so the book follows a main character named Nathan Burnett, who's just turned 30, and shit's not really going well. He's the first page of issue 1 is the most existentially terrifying splash page I've ever written, and it is a close-up of a phone screen, and it's his bank account balances, and he has a checking account with like $46.98 and a credit card with like $38,000 of debt on it. And there's a word balloon coming from the phone, and it says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Burnett, but unfortunately, your loan application has been denied." And he's like in this argument with the bank as he's driving, going like, "Can you just give me a few $1,000s?" And like, well, like your debt to income ratio, like until you get your income up. And he's like, "I wouldn't need a loan if I could get my income up."
Yeah.
And and basically by page 4, he's moving back in with his parents.
Yeah.
And he is trying to be a novelist. He loves Raymond Chandler, like he loves James Ellroy. He has had this kind of romanticized idea of being a like crime fiction author in Los Angeles for kind of his whole life, which we'll get into as the series goes on. And it just hasn't worked out. And then from there, he discovers a miniature black hole. He, along with his Small Doses best friend who never left their hometown, they discover after a night of drinking this miniature black hole that, transforms Nathan into the title character of the series, Radiant Black, though he's not named yet. Yeah. Which is a thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely a scene that's coming. That I actually just wrote it. So it's an entertaining one, especially if you like Marshall, the Small Doses best friend.
The smile. Not to interrupt you, Kyle, but the smile on your face as you're talking about these reveals, it's cool. It's nice because you seem like you're a fan, like, and you're excited about this in a way
What's
that
coming.
like and.
Thanks, man. I am. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the way the book even came about was, Eric reminded me recently that I guess we talked about original superhero stuff like in 2015, but I don't really remember that. I also had like my life fell apart in 20 16 after a breakup. So like that period's a little hazy in general. It was actually after that breakup that I ended up moving back to my hometown, just as a coincidence, because I was traveling and then I stopped there coming back from Europe, and my parents are both older and retired, and every time I'd been back home since I left after college. I grew up in Illinois, and I live in Los Angeles now, but like every time I was back home since college, I always thought to myself, like, one day when I have time, I'm going to come back and spend like a big chunk of time here. And then suddenly, I'm back there, and I was only supposed to be there for like 3 days. And there was this like feeling of calm that I had eating oatmeal with my dad, actually.
With raisins?
With raisins, yeah. I sent him that issue. This is going to make no sense for anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. But, I'm excited to hear about it. Go ahead.
I did send him that issue, and he texted me back, and he's like, I guess I need to be more careful when I talk around you. You might be listening, or something like that. There's some definite dad lines in there that like I could like. My sister laughed pretty hard when I told her a few of them.
Yeah.
That are in the book, because it's like straight up our dad, or they're not things our dad has said, but there are things that like our dad probably should say, just based on his personality.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and I just realized like, wow, like I don't have anywhere I need to be, and like that time is right now. And I ended up staying for like 3 months, and it was awesome because it was a really great way to heal from something that was like a real kind of, I'm not gonna lie, it was a very tragic event in my life. Tragic, not that anyone died, but like think you're planning a life with someone and you move in together, and then they come home out of nowhere and they've changed their mind, and suddenly you have nowhere to live. It's like one of those. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that period's a little blurry, but what did happen is, as I was doing Power Rangers, I started thinking more and more about like, I want to build something on my own. And I'd had this idea about doing something potentially like slightly dystopian, that would only be like a 6-issue thing, but it would have been kind of like the Lord of the Rings for something like a Power Rangers or a Sentai or a whatever, where it's like the story is taking place centuries after heroes and things like that. And like I said, it's just gonna be like this limited series thing. And then in October of last year, like after New York Comic-Con, Eric Stevenson and I were texting, and he's like, oh, by the way, he's like, have I ever talked to you about like doing an original superhero? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, not a Batman, analog or anything like that, but like something contemporary and new. And I was like, I would kill to do that, but is there a market for that? And we kind of talked through it and talked through the points. And I was like, I just started thinking about it more and more. And it was like, well, this like dystopian thing had like, I had the miniature black holes, and I had the name Radiant Black, and I had all of these cool world building aspects. And because I built out what would have happened the 200 years in the past. And it was like, if I do it straight, and the idea of like a kid who is 30 now as opposed to a teenager getting powers, and what it's actually like being our age in this state of the world. And this is not having anything to do with the pandemic. I'm just saying, like, the promise and the path that was sold to us. I think we're probably all about the same age. Like the promise and the path that was sold to us of like, you graduate high school and you go to college, and then, you start you get married, you start a family, you buy a house, you have this career, 20 years, whatever. Like that's not real anymore. Or it is for some people, but it's not nearly as guaranteed or attainable as it used to be. I mean, the idea, like the rise of the gig economy and, freelance life and things like that, there has been a big proliferation of that over the last 15 years, 10 years. And so just like looking at, like, I know a lot of people who've had to move back in with their parents, and, like I said, I did for a couple months as well. And so I was just looking at like, well, that does feel like something and debt. That's a thing we don't talk about, like, as a society. Like, it's uncomfortable and it feels like there's stigma around it and we're embarrassed, you know? And I just basically decided, you know what, I'm going to write about all the shit that terrifies me.
I love that too, because like when you first start writing a book, I feel like all superheroes and things like that, they typically always have to start out at like 16 to 18 years old. They're always teenagers. Mark Grayson was a teenager when he started out, and then they get older as they go, and then they grow as they mature. Obviously their character matures, but I like that Nathan, the main character in Radiant Black, starts out, he's 30 years old. He's already an adult and going through the same issues that we're having. And I think that's smart too, because the comic book fandom and comic book readers, I feel like they're getting older and older. And like when I go to Comic-Cons, I go to tons of Comic-Cons a year, and they're all people around my age, and I'm 33. So I think I love that I can relate to him more as a 30-year-old than somebody who's like 16.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tricky like balancing act, because ideologically, making a book for younger readers is something I believe in, and it's something that kind of every creator to a certain degree believes in. But there's also this argument of like, hey, like, young readers just aren't there anymore. Like, YA is a different, story. What I'm really talking about is like kind of big two superhero books. I don't know if that's true or not. But I do know that I did 3 years of Power Rangers, and I'm really, really proud of the work I did there. And I got to meet a lot of really amazing fans and readers who weren't fans but wanted to try it out because they liked the show as a kid, or fans who didn't read comics but were willing to try it out because they liked Power Rangers. And that cuts across age demographics, though it did skew a bit older. Like, it definitely skewed like 25 to 40, 25 to 35, 25 to 40. Yeah. And that's not to say like I'm specifically writing this book for only us of this age, but right. I do think like our generation, there is something a little unique there. My ex used to call it, and I think she may have gotten this from someone, but I don't remember where. My ex used to call it the Oregon Trail generation. I'm 35 and she's 4 years older than me. And she was like, if you're old enough to remember walking into a classroom and dying of dysentery on the Oregon Trail, you're not a millennial. Like, we are this weird little pocket
We are this
generation.
in between. Yeah.
Her even more so than me. And even though that's only 4 years, like, the fact that we didn't have the internet until I was 14, I want to say.
Yeah. High school. I mean,
yeah,
we went up to high school without internet. Like, that wasn't a thing really.
We remember that transition. Yeah. Like, I can leave my phone behind. I went back home. I went back to Chicago for Christmas last year for 10 days. I left my phone in LA. Yeah. And like, all of my friends, everyone was like, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" And I was like, "No, I want to do this. Like, I hate that I'm addicted to this thing, and I want to see what that feels like again." And it was great. There was this moment where I was with my aunt and uncle, and we were having like this long conversation, and I was supposed to meet my friends at like a bar actually pretty nearby where my aunt and uncle lived, and I was late, which is kind of par for the course for me in a lot of aspects of my life. But I was late, and it was like 5 minutes late, and then 10 minutes late, and at a certain point I was like a half hour late. And I remember leaving and driving over and thinking to myself, like, well, maybe they may not be there anymore, but at the same time, like, there's nothing I can do about this. Yeah. And it's just okay. Like, it just is. Like, and suddenly I remembered, like, meeting, like, in high school, junior high and whatnot, like, before cell phones, like, hey, let's meet at the mall on Sunday at 3, and we're going to go see this movie. And so you wait around, and like at 2:55, if like people aren't there, you just go see the movie without them. Yeah. Yeah. And then like you see them at school the next day, they're like, "Oh, sorry, I couldn't, whatever happened or whatever." It just wasn't a big deal.
And it was acceptable. Right. Now it feels as though there's this like baked in concern of like, well, they're not responding. I mean, well, maybe this happened. Have you have you texted them? Did you call them? Like, maybe call their friend. Are they with them? Maybe, what I mean? Like, there's this. Yeah.
And
I heard
I
a
thought
story.
I thought I was being really smart because I left like, you know how you like when you're driving like on an iPhone, like you can set it up to like an auto message will send someone. So I just rewrote that auto message to say like, hey, I'm back, you know, I don't have my phone. I'm back to Chicago. Here's my, you know, parents' house number. If you really need to get a hold of me, otherwise email me. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like all good. And except that I plugged my phone in so it would last for 10 days. But by plugging it in, it auto updated and restarted. And so that message just never was there for anyone. So I came back to like 46 text messages going like, are you alive?
Yeah. Were you saying something, TJ?
I heard a story about how the singer Ed Sheeran decided to go a year without a cell phone, and after the year was up, he said, I liked it so much that I'll never have a phone again. He doesn't have a cell phone.
I mean, I got off the same time that I went home without my phone. I got rid of all my social media, Facebook, everything.
Yeah.
I did reactivate, you know, Twitter and Instagram like during the pandemic because it was just like, hey, this is hard enough as it is right now. I live alone with a cat, and it's like, you know, it was a lot. But I didn't reactivate my Facebook until about a month ago because of a Kickstarter that I was doing. And our publicist was like, what do you mean you don't have a Facebook? Like, you need to start that shit like right now if you want to make the goal. And I was like, oh. So after, you know, having not had it for like 10 months, I reactivated it. I don't understand. It's always been awful. But having like it almost feels like when people describe after they've stopped eating sugar for a long time and then they try it again, they're like, oh God, it's so intense. Looking at Facebook, I was like, wow, this is like, clearly this is like it's just 20th iteration to like just keep dopamine hitting you like in the most efficient way possible because I can't like all these buttons. I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah. I stopped using it years and years ago and I had to get back on just this past week for something work related and it was a mess. It's such a pain to figure out. I know. I want to bring up before we get too much further from it, a fun coincidence with the hometown that Radiant Black takes place in. The last like major trip that Katie and I, my wife and I took in the summer of 2019 was we went to Chicago and because we had never been before, we stayed with a cousin of mine in a small town outside of Chicago, and I thought that it was cool because that small town was named Lockport, which is the same small town. Well, it's the same name of the small town that I currently work in Western New York, Lockport. So I work in Lockport, New York, and we stayed in a Lockport, New York outside Chicago, and I thought that was, a Lockport, Illinois outside of Chicago, and I thought that was so cool, cute little town, railroad tracks. Went into a comic shop, found an Invincible #3. I tweeted about that a while ago. And just thought nothing else of it until reading this issue. And it takes place in Lockport, Illinois, and it was just really, really cool. And what's that, Bill?
Is that your hometown too, Kyle?
It is, yeah. It's the bar that Nathan and Marshall drink at is definitely a bar that I have written comic book issues in and drink at.
Yeah.
But you know, actually, this is a coincidence. That seat where they're sitting in issue 1 in that bar, Nathan and Marshall, I was sitting in that seat a year ago when I was doing the last rewrite on the Shadow Hours feature script, and I was redlining it because I didn't have my phone or anything. Like I printed it out when I was back home because I got notes, like final notes, like on December 20th as I was flying back to Chicago, and I was like, God damn it! They're like, yeah, we want to move on this like in January, so I like just did the rewrite by hand over 10 days, which was awesome. I just carried a script around with me like everywhere, and it's not like LA where everyone's like, oh, so you're a writer? What do you really do? And it's like Chicago, like, you're a writer, really? And it's like, oh, why don't I live here? You know?
Yeah.
So Lockport. Technically Lockport's not my hometown. I actually grew up in Homer Glen, which is right next to Lockport. But up until I was, I don't know, 8 years old, our mailing city was Lockport, and then it changed to Homer Glen at some point. I don't know, it became a municipality or whatever. But I went to Lockport High School, and they literally are like, they're right next to each other. So like that's Lockport is for all intents and purposes, like Lockport's my hometown.
Yeah.
That comic book store I've been going to that store. It was in a different location. It was in 2 other locations when I started going to it. It's been there for, since I was 13. I'm 35 now. So I've known Joe, who runs it, and Amazing Fantasy. In Moonstone, which is a publishing company, like since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Joe and those guys had a publishing company and were making comics was like a huge thing to me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm in Lockport, Illinois, and I'm like, wait, you can make comics and not live in New York or live in Los Angeles, where entertainment just seemingly has to be. Yeah. Like that, it was like, oh, I guess I could maybe do this, like it definitely had an impact on me.
Yeah. One question I want to bring up that was asked on Twitter by at DJ Boy, I think, says how much time out of costume life takes place in it, and also, is this the first superhero in this world? And just within the first 2 issues, I really like, and that's what I was getting at with the hometown and his friend, and you're going to see his family and get to know them, and even the local police. Like there's a lot out of costume.
Yeah, there's a lot out of costume. I was actually, right before we jumped on to record this, I was walking, just doing a quick walk in my neighborhood, masked and socially distant, responsibly, I should add. But I was thinking about a scene that I want to write, and I don't know where to do it, in what issue, but I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna be good, because it's something out of costume, and it's specific to the writing career, but it also remixes something that happened to me. And that's kind of the thing with the book. Like when I decided to do this, and we decided, once Eric was like, an original superhero, contemporary superhero, like for me, it was like, well, this is it. Like, this is what I've spent 10 years, preparing for, like all the superhero comics I've written over the years. And I haven't written really that many, comparatively to other, big, to other superhero writers, but I've written way more than I ever thought I would ever be capable of writing. And so it's like, okay, I know what I like and I know what I want to do, but now I really want a foundation that I could grow with. Mm-hmm. Like, one of the things I love about early Image superheroes is that those characters aged. Like, for the first however many years, especially, like, those characters aged in real time. Mm-hmm. Like, Savage Dragon is actually not Savage Dragon anymore. It's his son who stars in the book. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that anything can happen. And so I just started thinking, like, okay, if I'm going to build this out, blue sky approach, especially then once Ultraman was announced, and the reaction with retailers and with fans was very, very positive. And it was such a direct line from, oh, the guy who did Power Rangers or like built the Power Rangers brand is now doing Ultraman for Marvel. I was surprised at how quickly that narrative took hold with retailers. And I guess it just goes to show, like, when you're doing the work, you're kind of in a bubble, and you're like, I hope people read this, like, you don't know. But within the industry, especially, like, for a while when I was doing Rangers, like, there would be editors from Marvel DC. They're like, Power Rangers? You do? Oh, I didn't know that was a book. And it's like, motherfucker, we sold 130,000 issues last month. Like, fuck you. I didn't know that was a book. Like, we beat everything but Batman. So it's like, so there was a little bit of that feeling I had where I was like, I don't know that anyone's gonna, care. And then when Ultraman was announced, it was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Kyle's doing this, and like and that took hold, and it was like, wow, that's okay, that's awesome. And it's even more awesome that, like, we're building Radiant Black that is in that same kind of genre, or subgenre, I would say, spirit. And so it was like even more important to me, where I was like, I want this to last. And so I am going to build a foundation here where, I think I said this at the start of the podcast, like, this is not a book about me, but there's a lot of me in this book. Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely by design. Because if I am lucky enough to be able to keep writing this for, 10 years from now, I don't want I don't want to like hate the foundation or the format that I created, you know?
Yeah.
I heard Jerry Seinfeld talk once about his show, about the Seinfeld, and how it was like time to end it. And I don't remember if he was talking to, I think he might have been talking to Dave Chappelle, or maybe it was Steve Martin, but he was talking about how he didn't think the show was, the way they built the show was very, very specific, and it didn't lend itself, in his opinion, to evolving with him. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really unique perspective, you know, because you think about it, and so much of Seinfeld, none of them end up married. Susan dies, you know, like spoiler alert. But none of them end up married. None of them they're all still in the same, you know, apartments and everything. Like, it very much is the illusion of change. Yeah. And it's like, how long would that have, like, could the show have survived, like, and now they're living in the Hamptons, or Jerry moves to the suburbs and starts a family. And it's like, probably not, you know. But with something like Radiant Black, like, I think with this foundation, it absolutely can grow and ebb and flow and change, as hopefully I do, and Marcelo does, like the whole team.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm stuck on this thing that I heard you say when you had the idea of Radiant Black before it was like someone came to you and said, hey, you want to do an original superhero book, right? And it took place 200 years in the future. Right. So is that potentially I don't know if you're allowed to say or not, but is that like an idea?
My book, I can say whatever the fuck I want.
All right, well then fuck it. So is that how it's gonna like? Are we gonna see 200 years in the future? Like, do you have that kind of big scope in mind for this book? Like, because I think it's awesome where it starts and where it could fucking go.
Yeah, I mean, yes. The short answer is yes, but it's not. I have a lot of world building figured out, but the way that I approach world building is I really only usually world build as much as I need to. Like, I'm not gonna pull a Tolkien and you know, spend 20 pages describing the shape of trees, you know. But I do think with something like this, you know, Matt Groom and I doing Ultraman together, we really built out something that is like, okay, here's a pitch for, you know, some insane amount of issues, and we built out, here's what each arc would be, here's how it would work in perpetuity. And so much of that was also because there's a licensor involved in Subaraya, and so some of the asks that we're making in maybe, you know, this first story arc, we want to show like why they're important asks and how we want to pay them off later. And that really just comes out of experience. Matt works for a design company called For the People in Australia, an amazing design firm. And so Matt builds brand narratives. He deals with high-end clients quite a bit and helping build their story. And so he's got a lot of experience there as far as like anticipating, like, okay, if we could give the whole vision, that's going to help, you know, across the board. For even if we never get to that vision, or if that vision doesn't get approved, or the book doesn't keep going, you know, we don't know. But the other part is like, I had a lot of experience doing that on Rangers, and especially building what became Shattered Grid, which, like, you know, Michael behind the scenes helped me like build this Excel spreadsheet that I talked about across podcasts for years now, where I had a spreadsheet of 200 plus Power Rangers and where they all were at what point in the story, so I could keep track of like, okay, who's dead, whose powers does Draken have, who have I turned into sentries, have we seen those sentries, what needs to be designed, who's still available for this, you know. And so I have quite a bit of experience building out at that scale, and I also learned a lot from Scott Snyder, just like when we were both on the Bat books together and watching how he built events. That said, there's a part of me that really, really likes, almost to like an addictive level, not being firm on what's coming next. Like, Mark Waid doesn't outline anymore. Mark Waid is also a genius, like a story genius. His whole Daredevil run, he didn't outline any of it. Like, he just, like, every issue it was like, how do I get out of this one? Well, that's next month's Mark problem, you know. And he really flourishes creatively in that kind of, like, a little bit of, like, organized chaos. And I do embrace some of that now, you know. And that's actually where I think some of Kurt's notes with issue 1 were coming from, is I knew enough of what I needed Nathan's setup to be and the background to be to get things going. And Kurt was looking for more specificity, and he was right. But I had to, like, check myself, because I was like, okay, there is a difference between, like, knowing it and committing to it. And sometimes committing to it earlier is for sure better, you know. But I also have this part of me that's like, well, I don't want to commit too fully, because I might change my mind, or we might come up with a better version of that idea, or, you know, that payoff, or how to spin that out. So I always like to leave myself, like, I call them story outs. I like to leave outs so that if I need to pull the ripcord, it's like, oh, I can maneuver, you know, pretty seamlessly. That means not being as firm on certain things that, as Michael would, like, who I keep mentioning, editor and designer, not being as committed and firm as Michael would like me to be. So it's this kind of, like, back and forth conversation about, like, so like, when are we doing this, Kyle? And I'm like, I'm not sure yet, because I want to see how. I mean, think about Robert's story about the Omni-Man twist, and he wanted originally to do that at, like, issue 24, 25. You know, I'm not crazy like that. I'm not going to save my best shit for, like, 2 years from now, knowing just what the market is like. And I've done creator-owned books. I've done 5 of them now, and it's like, none of them lasted. The longest one was Cowl. It lasted to issue 11. So, you know, I know you gotta lead big. Yeah. But I do like having that flexibility at the same time. So the super long-winded answer to your question, Bill, is that I do have that stuff figured out. The 200 years in the future stuff, I do have figured out for sure. How do I want to describe this, though?
Is that's just not the point right now, though? That's not the story right now. It's like that can happen, that there's something there when and if you ever get to it. Like, there's a path.
But how do we depict and explore it? Because, you know, I want to say it, but I don't want to say it.
No, don't say it. Don't say it.
So I'm not going to say it. But what I will say is that the thing that I cracked that I'm really, really excited about, and I don't think this spoils anything. The thing that I cracked that I'm really excited about was something that I struggled with on Power Rangers. And it was never a problem on Rangers, except for the fact that I didn't know how to. It's like if I had decided to try to do what I'm about to say, I didn't quite know how to do it. And that is that once a story goes cosmic or across dimensions, like Power Rangers did, it's really hard to go back to the high school clique drama. Like, you just expanded the scope exponentially. Like, how do you go back to, you know, it's that line from that last Spider-Man movie where he's like, you know, what's the Sam Jackson line? Bitch, you've been to space.
Yeah.
You're not friendly neighborhood anymore, you know? Yeah. And that's a real thing. It's like, oh, how do you, and if you guys have read my Power Rangers, like, there is a certain point where, like, the high school stuff goes away as we get into alternate timelines, as we get into the big mega events. And then Ryan's book, Go-Go, really took that role of, like, telling the high school stories and the really interpersonal relationship stories.
And I mean, Invincible did it too. I mean, Invincible goes and then comes back and then it's dealing with the small-time villains, even if it's for a moment across, you know, several panels on a splash or something like that, where it's just taking care of the usual B villains, just you know, doing the day-to-day stuff, and, you know.
And the thing that Ryan and I used to laugh about is, like, Daphne, our editor on Ranger, she hired Ryan not knowing that he and I have been, like, best friends since college, and that the reason he was writing comics is because I asked him to co-write in the 11th hour some issues of Gates of Gotham with me because I was so under deadline, and they just gave me Nightwing for the New 52, and it's my dream book, as you can tell from this Nightwing poster over my shoulder. And I had to call Ryan, and I was like, do you want to write Batman with me? He was J.J. Abrams' assistant at the time. And so he was like getting someone coffee, and he's like, yeah, okay. And I was like, dude, are you not, did you hear what I just said? Do you want to write Batman with me? And finally it like clicked after he delivered whatever latte and scraped the foam off it for whoever. And so he wrote these issues of Gates of Gotham, and then Bad Robot was like, what do you mean JJ's assistant is writing Batman? Well, do you want to write some Star Trek comics? And he was like, do I? And Daphne loves Star Trek, and so they met that way. But the irony is that Ryan is one of the best idea people I've ever met in my life. He's one of the best writers I know too, but he is Mr. Massive Idea, okay? And I tended to be much more like the scene work, like in the interpersonal stuff. Not that he couldn't do it or anything, but that's just like how we naturally gravitated towards stuff, you know? And it just, which made it super ironic that I ended up writing the fucking biggest, I would argue, Power Ranger story of all time across seasons and generations and dimensions and universes and the whole 9 yards, and Ryan wrote the high school clique drama book. Like, it's just funny how those things tend to work out, you know. But now he's running everything, and I'm so happy for him. But to that, oh man, I had some, there was a reason I was bringing that up. I'm so sorry. You were just saying yeah, Invincible did it as well, right? Yeah. So the thing I settled on, I came up with, was if we don't, as readers, if we don't learn about the cosmic until Nathan does, it means that I can still do friendly neighborhood villains. Yeah. Because I can bring in a cosmic threat, and as long as we keep the scope limited to Nathan's point of view, and we're not telling scenes with those cosmic threats, you know, out in fucking space or as a part of whatever it is, Nathan doesn't know what else is out there, and neither will we. So we're not sitting there as readers going like, yeah, but like there's a giant, you know, robot armada. By the way, I'm not saying, maybe that's an idea, Bill. I mean, I don't know. I don't like to commit, you know?
I didn't even have my hand raised. You just knew I was going to be like, hey, remember when you said that?
But no, seriously, like when I stumbled on it, I was like, oh, that's how to do it. Like, cause I do have this, like, and this is why I don't think it's a spoiler. Like, they're miniature black holes. He finds it in his hometown, like levitating above train tracks, and he touches a miniature black hole and transforms into this, like, you know, superhero. And it's like, well, where the hell did this thing come from, you know? And like, who made it and who wants it back? So I'm not spoiling anything to say, like, there's absolutely a cosmic component to this, but how he operates on Earth is equally as important. And we're trying to do some things that I haven't really seen done in superhero comics before. I mean, he's basically an Uber driver. Yeah. And that actually plays into some of his superheroics. He's going to have, like I said, I alluded to before, the Radiant Black Twitter account is going to be in universe when we want it to be.
And the end of issue 1 certainly opens up the door, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
There's a part in issue 2 as well where it makes sense what you're saying, because he says something while he's sleeping, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. I'm super interested to find out what it is. And I fucking hate when movies do it. Nothing loses my interest more than when I know what's going on, but the main character doesn't. I'm just like, why am I even watching this? Yeah. Like, I okay, and I can turn it off because I already fucking know about this thing, and the main character doesn't. I love going on that journey. If you can write something, or if you can create something where you're as interested or more interested in the characters when they're out of costume,
right,
you will care that much more about all this other stuff. And that's what I think Invincible does so well. It's like, when it goes back to him being like, oh my God, I have to shit because this food is alien. And it's just a scene where they're trying to figure out how the fucking toilet works.
I'll tell you
that,
my favorite Invincible thing where things when you ask like where did it grab you really, this might be a weird one, but when who's the dinosaur?
Dinosaurus. What is wrong with you? I'm off this call. Bye, guys.
I already fucking I warned Ryan yesterday. I was like, don't grill me. It's been a few months. I don't even recognize people in my neighborhood when I run into them these days. Okay. I once sat next to an ex for like 20 minutes and didn't realize it was her. Anyway, when Dinosaurus blows up Las Vegas, because there's that moment, I think it's an issue later, right, where Mark goes, "Oh my God, he was right."
Yeah.
And I was like,
is right.
Really? Well, how are you going to get out of this one, Robert? And was the Invincible War before that? I think it was.
Invincible War with Angstrom Levy, like all the different alternate dimensions.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there are so many great moments and gags. I actually felt like the Invincible War was a little under, from a concept standpoint, it was a little underutilized.
So
like,
when it happened at the time of it coming out monthly, Robert Kirkman's goal was to pack a summer-long event into one issue. The goal was the gag of it, was like, I'm going to put as much as I can into a single double-sized issue, and you don't need to pick up all these other comics to figure out what to do, or you don't have to wait month to month to month to find out what happens at the end of this event.
That's awesome.
What I loved about that too is that it was just like one thing after another another. Like as soon as after that happened, Mark was fucking exhausted, and then Conquest fucking showed up.
So that's what I wanted to bridge to. But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just about to say the guy that I gave Invincible to is actually texting me right now, updates on what he's reading, and it's exciting. But anyways, I was just talking to him about that because he read that one a couple weeks ago. And I was like, there's a moment in issue 60 in the Invincible War where you don't see Mark for several panels, maybe a couple pages, and then he's flying away saying, "Eve, hold on, stay with me." Like,
awesome.
That's the point of that one. It's chaos. It's meant to be. So
I actually had to. I flipped backwards. I was like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
And there were a lot. That's kind of like one of the things I was talking about, where there were a lot of moments. There were a number of moments that Robert did stuff like that, and then he recontextualized or explained it a few pages later, and I was just like, wow, like that takes a level of confidence of storytelling to pull off that is very, very admirable. Yeah. And the Conquest stuff in particular, I keep meaning to reread because I thought it was excellent. I thought that whole, I don't know how many issues that was, but
it's an arc, so 6.
Roughly, 6. Yeah.
That whole fight with Conquest is 6 issues.
Yeah.
It's like 5.
Well,
like the Invincible War was also included in that.
Wow.
In the
the Conquest stuff I adored. And so there and again, like, there are things that just on a craft level, like that Ottley does as well, where it was like when Mark is flying and Angstrom keeps teleporting him during the Invincible War.
Yeah.
Like, and those vertical panels and how he does it, so smart, so great, such a great use of the format of the medium. But then I did feel also like I was going to always keep reading, but like I did feel lulls at times because I was binging all at once. Yeah. And I like kind of took note of some of those lulls, going like, okay, what am I reacting to here? Because that happens when you're writing an ongoing book. It just does. Yeah. Like on Rangers, like year 2 for me was like, it was trying to get blood from a stone, like from a narrative standpoint. Cause I was like, I knew I had to write Shattered Grid next. And I was like, oh my God, can we just like go to that stuff? Like this is funny. Like hard.
We talked a little bit about that recently on the Oblivion Song podcast, where the most recent issue of Oblivion Song was like, cause I know how Kirkman writes, when he writes, not for trades or for collections, but he knows where that trade will end. He knows where that collection will end, where that hardcover will end, where that omnibus ends, and so on. And the most recent issue we read and talked about was I want to say issue 4 in a trade or what would be the fourth issue in a trade. And it's like, okay, so we've gone somewhere in the beginning of this story, and I know that the next two are going to be this huge ramp up because this is what we've kind of led to. So it's that issue 4 like lull or somewhat what you're saying, and that I think that also happens on the grander scale as well, where you know where you're going, you know that we're going to get to the Viltrumite War, but we got to get there first. And I'm currently in this, but I got to fill those issues. I gotta.
Well, yeah, and the Dinosaurus stuff for me is where the book. It's interesting looking back on it now, knowing how the end came about with Robert going, so maybe I don't want to hand this off to someone. I think I have an ending. To me, that starts with the Dinosaurus stuff, because that's where the Dinosaur stuff to me was where it was like, hey, as a creator, and I might be totally wrong, but I felt like it was like going as a creator, you're like, okay, I've done. So how many issues was that? When is Dinosaurus?
100.
When is he?
100.
100?
It ends. His arc ends at 100.
You're asking. No. You're asking when
nuking Vegas.
Nuking Vegas. I want to say that's. Oh no, early 70s, and then.
So that's the thing. To me, it was like I've done 70 some issues of this book, and it's like, what do I do now? Like that would be my thought at that point. And then getting into like, okay, if we were going to remake the world, how would we do it? That is a bold as fuck story like choice. And he leans into it, and then he keeps going, and there's no undoing. You know, you'll also notice that, and I don't know if he's talked about this, and I've never asked him, but you know, there were other Image heroes that showed up through Invincible War, like whenever he needed them, and then at a certain point. It was like they never show up again, and it truly is its own thing because he's about to remake our world. You know, and like I'm there for that. I love that. And then on top of that, as it got into the thing that really blows me away thinking about it is like, so if Dinosaurus' arc ends at around 100, there's still 44 issues there. That's like 4 years of and is all the robot stuff after that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That blows my mind because the robot stuff.
Yeah. That was 111. Robot doing that takeover was 111.
So just as I was feeling a little, so between 100 and 111 is probably where I felt the most fatigue. And it wasn't bad. I was
I'm sure
I'm just like,
Robert knew. Okay. Here's the issue 100 because the issue 100 is going to be the climax with Dinosaurus, which it was. And I know issue 111, 111, this thing that he wanted to do was going to be there. Now, in between these two, I got to make sure that the seeds are planted because there were several issues where like something's going on with Robot. Something's going on between him and Monster Girl. They came back. Something's not right. And then that's the lull that you're referring to. That's the point in which there are certainly things that happened between those within there. Yeah. But
Well, and so all of that is like definitely been rattling around in my brain though, like since I read it all, because to build to your earlier question about like the 200 years in the future, like my thing as I've been working on this now is like, okay, there's no guarantee I get more than 6 issues with Radiant Black. So what do we do narratively? Not only just our best stuff, but like, I don't want to play things safe. And so there are some things we're going to be doing. I'll put it this way. You know, I'll just say it. Issue 4, everything changes for real. For real. Like, so it's like, okay, like I'm going to commit to this, you know? And because if you're not swinging big, then what's the point? And, you know, talking about like insecurities and things like that, like the announcement and everything that has been going on, and we've been building all these assets behind the scenes for months, the website, the social graphics with pull quotes, the social, you know, accounts, the glitch graphics. I animated all those myself for the pre-release announcement. There's some other stuff coming up that we haven't said we're doing for FOC. Like there's been a lot, and the reaction has been really, really awesome.
But that just makes it that much more scary when you know you're about to blow it up.
Well, it's not. I'm not saying. It's also, it's not even that. It's going like, yeah, but is the book good?
Like,
Like suddenly you're like second guessing everything. You're like, is it gonna,
Yeah.
let me put it this way. I didn't write the slogan, a superhero series for a new generation. Okay. I didn't write that,
Yeah.
but that's now our slogan. And I'm like, all right, let's
you have to live up to that. It's like, is the movie
Fucking do it.
is the trailer better than the fucking movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you've got all this hype train and stuff like that. So it's I couldn't imagine the amount of stress that you're going through, like, or anxiety or just angst or like, uncertainty.
Honestly, it's
but
okay. It's okay. It's okay because the best thing that ever happened to me in my career was I had a really awful time writing for DC during the New 52, and it was my all-time favorite character, and it was a very complicated time with a lot of politics and some people that were really shitty to me as well. And also I was young and learning how to write while also navigating this really high pressure dynamic.
Yeah.
And the best thing that happened was I wrote some books that I am not proud of, and they came out, and the sun still came up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was realizing like, oh, okay, so that's what that feels like. And oh wow, 10 years later, I 9 years later, whatever, I still have a career. And so I kind of embrace that now in a way that it doesn't. Every once in a while, I'll definitely get anxious about what we're talking about. But I put together a really, really good team around me. And Marcelo and I are, who's our artist and co-creator, but then Michael and even Matt, Groom, just from the sidelines. Like, I have a good team. I'm not by myself.
There's a couple of things I want to say based on what you just said. First of all, when Ryan was the one that intercepted your when you first reached out to us, and he was talking to us. He's like, Kyle Higgins reached out to us. And I'm like, I literally have his Nightwing, like his Nightwing issue 1 sitting on display in my dining room.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Like I was pumped when you reached out to us too, because I'm also a fan of your work.
Oh, thanks, man.
Going into what you said about Radiant Black and kind of being nervous, we read the first 2 issues. You honestly, like, I understand because you're so close to it. Obviously, you're the creator. I personally feel you have nothing to worry about. The first 2 issues were incredible, and I'm pumped to like dig into like a new superhero, a modern superhero, someone that I can relate to more. So, and what you were talking about with your team, this is such a, like, the story is amazing. The look of it is amazing.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure we brought up Marcelo.
Yeah. The art is incredible.
Can we take some time to talk about that? Like, do you guys have time? Like, can we talk about?
We can. Yeah. I mean,
this is gonna be a 2-part episode, probably.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I could break this up, or I could just, we've done 3-hour episodes before.
We've done 3-hour episodes before.
It'll be our longest.
Okay.
But no, the art absolutely is incredible, and the colors are insane. So yeah.
Marcelo is the most amazing thing to happen to my life in a long time, and it's very funny to me how the universe works sometimes, because I met Marcelo because of an image book that I edited, and it's Matt Groom's image book, Self-Made. And when I was doing the podcast with Matt and Michael, this will all come back. When I was doing the podcast with Matt and Michael, and I was back home with my family for those 3 months that I was talking about, after, I went to Europe for like 5 weeks or something like that, because basically I decided to be the most cliched American going through a breakup of all time. And so I'm back home in Illinois. And an issue I wrote like literally 2 days after the breakup, 3 days after the breakup, was ready to go to the printer. And it was the Billy focused one-shot of Power Rangers. Yeah. Where the whole time under the suit, the one of the gag I came up with, the twist, is that he's actually morphed the whole time. And he's trying to...
I loved that too. That was so sick. That's such a cool idea.
Thank you. And the thing about it was, like, I love the idea that this kid who is Mr. Logic and Mr. Science, he's afraid. And he is trying to conquer that fear of being a Power Ranger now and what that means, the only way he knows how to, by logic and thought processes, right? Like not thought processes, but via logic and formula. So what's the formula? The formula is like the hero's journey, like the Joseph Campbell, like hero with 1,000 or 10,000 faces. I always mix up if it's 1,000 or 10,000 faces, but the Joseph Campbell, like story structure. So I love the idea that Billy is like teaching himself story structure so that he can, you know, go through the dark night of the soul and come out, you know, a better, more refined hero. And it's not working. And but I also wrote it going through like a really, really rough time, and so it was a little sparse from a dialogue standpoint. And so Daphne called me like on like a Thursday night, and she's like, so Saban has notes on this. They want they think we should do voiceover. And I was like, no, absolutely not. And she's like, I know. She's like, I've got your back, because we hadn't done voiceover, like first person narration at all in the book. And I have really strong opinions about first person narration.
We had just gone over this with crossover.
Oh, really?
We talked recently because of crossover has narration.
Yes.
And Bill wasn't a fan.
So I have opinions on on narration as well, and I think it has to do its own thing, and it has to be as compelling on its own for it to be worth doing.
God, thank you.
And it also, and I think if you do it right, it should be telling you something that you're not getting from the arts, or telling you something in opposition to what you're seeing in the art.
Which I think Saga does perfectly.
Yes. Like Saga, like fucking Saga.
Yes.
Saga, yes. I mean, just that's
yeah.
You don't have to say anything else. Like that book is perfect. That book is perfect. And it's that combination of that magical kind of mixture of Brian and Fiona, where for a book to elicit that kind of emotional reaction, for me anyway, as a reader, it's just magic. It's alchemy, because you think about it in comics, you don't have an actor's performance to lean on at all. Like it literally just is words in bubbles with art. And so when you feel something like that, is such a testament to the artist and the combination of the words juxtaposed with that artwork and the expressions and the acting, and Fiona is so fucking good. And you know what, Kirkman and Ottley and Corey Walker too, same way. Like I had real like emotional reactions reading some of this stuff because of how well it works together. Yeah. And color's a huge thing too. I could do fucking 20 minutes on all the different colors on Invincible, because I'm fascinated by that. Right. And I have opinions on all of them. All good, but like I just have opinions on. Yeah. Like, it was really, really interesting to see. Yeah. And also the costume change. But anyway, that'll be hour 4 of the podcast. But so I have really strong opinions on narration, and it's also, narration is really hard for me to write because of my opinions about it. So like, and I did, you know, an issue of Nightwing took me twice as long always because of the first person narration, you know? So she's like, they want to do narration. I was like, no, absolutely not. You know, I'm not breaking the mold of what we've done here. And she goes, right. She's like, so I agree with you. She's like, but I have an idea. And I you know, let me tell it to you. And she goes, what if you write a fictitious, because I didn't use the hero's journey, or is that what we called it? We called it something else. I called it like the hero's quest or something.
Oh,
and it was
that
like,
sounds familiar.
It was a fictional version of the Joseph Campbell like story cycle. And she's like, what if you narrate the book third person like it's excerpts from the hero's quest as Billy's going through it? And I was like, oh, that is such a fucking good idea. I'm so angry at you because this has to be in, you need this by tomorrow morning. I'm so angry at you for how good of an idea this is. God damn it. Because it was like 9 o'clock at night in Chicago. I was like, I have to do this. It's too good.
Yeah.
But it also meant really building out the fictional version of the Hero's Quest.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to Michael, and I was telling him about this and what I had to do now. And Michael, and at that point I couldn't tell Michael and Matt's voices apart, and I'd never seen them. So they were just like two Australian voices like in my ear all the time, you know. But we were G-chatting. Michael and I were G-chatting. And he was like, I just told Matt, he's like, you should talk to Matt. And he's like, I was like, why? And he's like, well, he teaches story structure. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's a writer. I was like, what? We've been talking for like a year. Like, I didn't know that at all, And also, I don't actually know which one Matt is. Like, which of you two, who am I talking to right now? So Michael? Okay, got it. So he reached out to Matt, and Matt was like, he's like, I would love to help with that. And I told him, I was like, okay. I was like, I have to get this in tomorrow morning, but like, if you want to help me on it, like, it's just between us. But, well, now I'm telling it on this podcast. But I was like, I wouldn't say no, because it was like such a tight deadline and everything. And so we worked on it together, and what he put together was really good. It was really good. And I obviously I made changes, and there was other stuff I wanted to do. And I definitely made it. Like I said, we did it together, and then I took it across the finish line myself. But I looped back to him, and I was like, hey, so what's the deal? Like, why do you want to write comics? And his exact line was, writing comics is the only thing I want to do. And I told him, I said, we have been talking for a year. Like, how have you never said this to me? And he goes, I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. I was like, let's hit pause for a second. Like, talk to me about kind of your background, like what you want to do, like what kind of stuff you like, etc. And so we had that conversation, and I said, all right, here's what I would recommend. I said, I've been toying around with this idea for a while, and I haven't done it yet, but I would be willing to do it here if you're interested. I was like, write the first issue of something, of a creator-owned, so I can see kind of where you're at. I said, and if we like it, I was like, I would be up for editing it, meaning like I can go out and I can find an artist, because it won't just be like, hey, check out my unpublished friend's, comic book script. It's like, hey, no, this is a book I'm putting together, and I'm going to walk it to publishers once we get the pitch pages done, etc. So he wrote the first issue script, and it was great. It was really good. I had notes. He did them. It got even better. I went and found an artist, Eduardo Ferragato, and we put these pitch pages together, and Image greenlit the book. And it's called Self-Made, and that's Matt's first book. And while we were making the book, Eduardo said, hey guys, I have this color. And I met Eduardo because he did some fill-in pages on my Hadrian's Wall book that Rod Reese brought him in, because he was a friend and we were really behind schedule. And I really liked the stuff. So, but while we were doing these self-made pages, Eduardo's like, hey, I have this, I have a friend, Marcelo Costa, who wants to do, he's really good with color. Like, I'm going to have him color if that's okay. And we're like, yeah, sure. And then we started seeing the colors. It was like, holy cow, like, who is this? These are amazing. And that sentiment was echoed by Daphne Plebin at Boom. So much so that before she'd even read the first issue that I slipped her, she started reaching out to Marcelo to hire him to color Power Rangers books. So Marcelo colors the free Comic Book Day issue of Power Rangers that Ryan and I wrote about the emissaries of the Morphin Masters. And then he colored pages during the Shattered Grid finale one-shot. Yep. Plus, he was doing self-made during all that time. He also colored the Soul of the Dragon graphic novel that I wrote. That was like my last thing I did on Power Rangers. And what's funny is that Marcelo is also an artist, but Walter Beamonte, who colored Daniele Di Niccolo on Shattered Grid and everything, Walter is an amazing colorist. He's also an artist as well. And I would chat with both of them through Facebook Messenger. So I kept mixing them up in my head because I was on like a bunch of books all at once. And so I forgot that Marcelo also drew. And as I was putting this book together, and I was and thinking about artists and looking for artists, and Daniele wasn't going to be available. He was going to go back on some stuff for Boom, and I'm thinking like I really want to do something with someone who gets what this is and the touch points and the references, etc. And suddenly I realized I was like, oh, because I'd been talking to Walter, and I was like, I don't think Walter would be a fit just from an art style standpoint. And what I didn't realize is like I had been thinking Marcelo wouldn't be a fit either, because I was thinking that of Walter's schedule. And suddenly I found this chat with Marcelo where he had said a while earlier on a different project he was available. And I was like, oh, well, let's. And so I just like we just started chatting, and it turns out he loves Sentai. And I was like, oh, wow, I feel like such an idiot. Like this whole time, like I'm really not doing a good job articulating this. But I was basically conflating two people. One, accident. And so then Marcelo started doing these designs, and I wasn't sure because, if you color, it's tough to get to redefine yourself as an illustrator if you're getting consistent coloring work in comics anyway. Very few kind of colorists have ended up drawing their own books as well. One of them, though, is Rod Reese, who quit his DC Comics coloring career to do this book with me called Cowl. And then we did Hadrian's Wall. And now he's doing all this big X stuff at Marvel. I'm so happy for him. Marcelo is kind of in that same mold where he really liked illustrating, but he really liked coloring as well. And he looked at them as separate things, and he started getting more coloring work. So he just went that path. And suddenly he was like, he's like, can I just do some designs and we'll see? Because I wasn't sure, And he started doing these designs, and each one just got better and better and better. And I was at this convention in Nova Scotia, and I was walking, like it was at night, it was freezing cold. I was walking by myself down the sidewalk, and he sends me what became the final costume design for Radiant Black. And I stopped like in my tracks, and I was just like, yes, that's it. Don't change anything. That's it. And I started texting it to my friends. I texted it to Stevenson as well. I was like, look at this. Like, because you just know. It's like that's something new. Like that feels classic but fresh, and it feels iconic.
Was it always that style, or did it go through various changes?
So there were a few days earlier he was sending me. Yeah, we were talking about just kind of he did some initial sketches. Mm-hmm. And none of them really, there were elements that we liked from each one, but none of them were really coalescing. It just felt a little generic. And finally, we had like a really grounded conversation where I was talking about different superhero costumes that I've responded to. Mm-hmm. And I was like, just strip it down. It's got to be graphic, and it's got to be able to read really small. Mm-hmm. And so this is what he came back with. And it was like such a breath of fresh air. Yeah. And actually Ryan is the one who said to me like 10 years ago, he's like, I think 90% of a character working and sticking around, especially for superheroes, is the design.
Hell yeah.
And like, look at Venom, you look at Spawn, you look at the Winter Soldier, you look at Miss Marvel, even Captain Marvel, the redesign that Jamie McKelvey did. Mm-hmm. Like the characters that have popped, Miles Morales as well. Yeah. Although I don't like the Miles Morales suit in the comics, but I love the Spider-Verse suit.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. Even Invincible. Like, did Robert say at one point, like, did he make a joke that he's like, Invincible sold because he was yellow or something like that? Like,
there's something like that along the lines of there being a yellow superhero, or there's something because he was originally orange and yellow.
Oh, and he was called Bulletproof.
And he was called Bulletproof, yeah. And
in the hardcover of Volume 1, I got a lot of joy out of that. Yeah. Robert described the emails to Eric Stevenson, and Eric wasn't the publisher at the time. I think he was under Valentino. Mm-hmm. But he was like, he describes the correspondence with Eric where Eric was like, yeah, but orange and yellow, like, are you sure about that? He goes, oh yeah, man. We think it really sings, and
really
Eric
sings,
responded, like Eric responded, he's like, I don't think it's the song you're looking for. Yeah. So, but talk about like such a great not synergy, but like kind of a coincidence where it's like you have a character named Invincible, and his logo is an eye, and you're publishing it Image. It's so right. It's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how Marcelo came on. And like, again, from that first design, it was like, oh yeah. And then he did more of some other characters and the power sets, and we built everything out, and it was like, okay, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And then he has really leveled up his game on this interiors, even from issue 1 to issue 2. Like, look at the fight scenes in issue 2. He's doing everything. He's not only drawing, but he's coloring the book himself. I don't know. We're probably going to end up bringing a colorist on for arc 2 just because it's so labor intensive.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably a lot of work.
It's a ton of work.
I was recently talking about Wolfman with my friend that's reading everything for the first time, and Jason Howard. I mean, it's one of those things that artist came to mind when talking about Marcelo, who's doing the drawing and the coloring, because Jason Howard did the same thing, and that's another series where the colors just pop off the page, and every page is dramatically different, and it looks great. It looks really good. What's it?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing at Radiant Black. I'm like, I have it up. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm just like looking at pictures, and I went to issue 2, and I'm looking at like that action scene, and Nate just says things that I'm thinking too, like, okay, well, I don't know what you just did, but that looks awesome. Like, and I'm like, it does look awesome. Like, I like when when the art can tell a story on its own without, to your point, narration. I fucking hate narration. Yeah. Like, it should be able to be interesting on its own, and you'd be like, what is going on here? And then like and I feel like with Marcelo, and I don't know any other work that he's done, because I've said I don't read a lot. But I think it's interesting, and I think you can tell when someone that's designing it, that is coloring it, that is like kind of working with the script in a way. Like, I feel like that's always a better illustration. I feel like it's a better visual story because they're so involved in all of it, Like, he designed Radiant Black, so he knows what it's going to look like when he throws his punch, or when like his visor gets cracked, or like something like that. It's just it's so good. You can tell, hearing this story, that he's so involved in all of the illustration and everything like that.
Yeah, and the other person that actually is a perfect segue as well to Michael and Becca Carey. Becca is our letterer. She is an amazing designer herself. And Michael again, he runs the Ranger Danger podcasts. And the nickname we all have for him is the Wizard, because he's really good at a lot of things in like really surprising ways. Like, for example, I told him at one point, I was like, hey, we're going to need a language. Like we're going to need an original language because of some things I want to do. And I'm trying to be, you guys can see it in the book. I'm trying to be coy right now though. But I was like, we're going to need an original language. And he's like, huh, okay. He's like, let me think on that. I was like, okay.
That's funny.
A few days go by.
A little bit ago, you had said that, I'm not J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm not going to write about, trees for pages and pages. But then I was like, yeah, but you kind of are making a language.
Well, I'm absolutely making a language. And because it's my book, I get to contradict myself whenever I want. But no. So but honestly, there is a reason for the language, and there's something specific that I'm looking to do with it. There's a few things, and I can tell you guys off air if you want to know. But there's a few things that I'm looking to do with it, and I was like, shit, we can't fake this. We're going to need this. Well, a few days go by, and all of a sudden, Michael sends me a PDF of like a deck that he's built that you like tab through, because he's presenting an idea. Uh-huh. He has built an entirely new language based on binary. And then he also turned it into a font. So we have an original language as a font that perfectly translates.
That's so cool.
Jeez.
That's so cool.
And so it's like shit like that. So, but anyway, flash back quite a ways to, I want to say, end of February. And Marcelo is doing a bunch of pages on issue 1, and we're really liking the direction of it all. I've asked Michael Cho to do the cover, but we haven't seen, a layout yet. He wouldn't send one for a few weeks. So it's like we weren't quite sure. We were still finding kind of like the style, the visual style of the book. Mm-hmm. But the visual style of a book, I think, is incredibly important, especially in now 2020. As there's so much content out there, like I think the best way to sell a book is with the present. You have to find a way to convey the confidence and clarity of vision to retailers and to potential readers, and everything from the design to the cover to the costume design, if we're talking about a superhero thing, mm-hmm. to the logo. It has to convey like, hey, this is a thing that's going to matter and it's going to be around. So like it's worth investing in. Yeah. Like that's kind of our approach, right? So, having done Rangers for as long as I did and then Ultraman, etc. Like my thinking on like doing like the title card spread in issue 1, it was like, oh, maybe it kind of feels like an 80s Sentai, maybe it's kind of like that, like the light tunnel that you used to see a lot, like in anime as well. Like maybe it's that with like radiant black, like real big, etc. And so Marcelo did a light tunnel, drawing, and so we're talking about that, and I was talking to Matt and Michael over GChat about it and different iterations, and Matt's like, oh, that's cool, etc. And Michael's not really saying anything, and then I kind of pushed him, and he was like, yeah, I don't like it. I was like, okay, and he's like, no, it's just personal thing. I just don't like it. I don't like that design, etc. I was like, all right, well, like I'm all ears. Like if you want to, like steer me, you're gonna edit this, and everything. And so all of a sudden I get this email like a day later, and he goes, here's why I don't like it, and here's what I think this book could be from a design standpoint. Mm-hmm. And he comped Invincible, and he goes, this isn't a nostalgia book. He's like, Power Rangers is the nostalgia book. There is no nostalgia to this. Yeah. He goes, this is the superhero book of 2020. He goes, this is what Invincible was 15 years ago. He goes, so what does that look like now? Taking into account modern contemporary design aesthetics, taking into account narrative conventions. Like he laid out kind of a mission statement for me, but through the lens of design. Wow. And Marcelo and I started talking, because I forwarded it to Marcelo immediately. And it almost became like, in a cool way, it almost became like the Jerry Maguire brief, at the start of the movie that Jerry Maguire writes. And you guys are looking at me. Have we not seen Jerry Maguire?
It's been so long. I don't know.
Jerry Maguire is a high-end, high-priced, very successful sports agent, and he starts to have a conscience. And he stays up all night one night, and he writes this basically like this like memorandum of like, hey, we shouldn't be trying to make more money. We should be having less clients so that we can do a better job with each one. And he has it printed at like a Kinko's, and he sends out hundreds of copies all around the agency. And then the next morning he wakes up and he's like, oh no, what have I done? And he walks into the agency and everyone's read it and everyone's clapping, and then like two agents are like, how long do you think he has? And he's like, I give it a week, and he's fired, know? But it was this like really inspiring like mission statement of like, here's what the sports agency world could be. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that looking at Michael's kind of, his vision on the design, riffing off of what I was trying to do, but I may not have quite been able to articulate yet what I thought the book would be. Mm-hmm. But that's why comics is so much fun. It's like when you have a good team around you, like everyone is like, this. That sounds a lot like
collaboration. It sounds a lot like Kirkman and Walker. He talks about that Corey Walker and Ryan Ottley, especially later in the book, are invincible. They are they're not just the illustrators. They're behind everything about it.
Yeah. Playing to individual strengths, I think that's awesome. You know what I mean? And I think, it sounds like the reins, like you don't have the reins held so tight to where you just have this vision that you want. Like it's almost letting other people in. That's when you were telling that story, I was feeling inspired. I'm like, yeah, let's fucking define 2020. Like, shit.
Well, you guys, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you guys want to do something in the book? Like, do you want to do like something like we can build something in back matter. Like,
No.
is he answering for all of you, Bill and Ryan?
He is not answering for everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely, would love to
Yeah,
do
of course.
that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like I said at the start, like we're doing some cool things. You know what? I'll say it for the first time here. We're doing something called Marshall's School of Business, which are going to be these one-page comics that we're going to do every issue. And it is Marshall, the Small Dose's best friend, high school best friend of Nathan, who still lives in Lockport, and he also is the manager at the retro video rental store of my dreams called The Real World. And it's Marshall School of Business is the world's only accredited business school that is set from behind I'm gonna butcher it. Let me just read it. Here, I'll read it to you. No, because I'm gonna mess it up. My friend Riley Trella wrote the first one. He's a comedy writer, and he nailed it. It says Marshall School of Business, the world's only accredited business school based behind a video store counter, and there's an asterisk, and then next to accredited, and then right below that sentence it says not accredited. And it's so we're doing a bunch of we're doing one every issue, and I have friends and new creators writing them because I think it's a really fun format because they're all kind of like that, you know. And I love that we're talking around it right now because people aren't going to know what it means, what this format I'm talking about is, but I imagine you can see the potential of what you can do with it. But then we're also doing articles on we're going to do articles on toy collecting within that kind of tokusatsu kind of community. It's not even tokusatsu, but just like Power Rangers. There's a huge toy component to Power Rangers and to Power Rangers fandom. There's also there's a lot of Kamen Rider toys and Ultraman and certainly Gundam and things like that. Like that's a big part of those communities. And so since Radiant Black has some of that flair as well, it was like, oh, let's do an article about that, right? I have someone that's going to be writing an article about like Raymond Chandler's cinema and it might be in universe for The Real World, you know, like for their newsletter or something, because it's Nathan's, you know, loves Raymond Chandler. So it's like, well, I just want to do cool stuff that celebrates the stuff we love and also is just extra incentive to pick up the book each month.
Speaking of getting more incentive for people to pick the book up, I want to bring up the fact that you have incredible variants already. I mean, like an awesome list of artists. I just saw
David
one
Finch.
I just saw Justin Mason just recently, and he's awesome. And that cover looks great. How do you get to just say, yeah, we're going to have 20 variants? I mean, is there a limit? How does that work?
So I've never really done variants before to this extent.
I was going to say, because that's one of my favorite things of when I was reading through Power Rangers. All those variants in the back are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. That definitely was a point of reference for me. Just I thought that Boom handled the covers for the most part pretty well. And so I think they absolutely went overboard with like certain, like issues 1 had like 27 covers or something like that. It's like, we're not going to do that. But at the same time, like part of the fun for me of doing a book like this is I know a lot of artists and I'm a fan of a lot of artists, and just the idea of like getting different artists to do a take on something I created, like, oh man, like that's so cool. You want to talk about like being excited and being a fan of something again? That's a great feeling. Every time a cover comes into my inbox, it's like, oh, and Marcelo the same way. It's like, hey, this is our guy, you know, and someone else is drawing him. The other thing too, and this is just a theory, but the other thing I was thinking about is like, really, this is kind of the first big Image superhero since Invincible. Like, and don't quote me on that. Like, there may have been some others, but as far as like, you know, I'll put it this way: Savage Dragon's on the TV in issue 1. You know, like, it's definitely something that like we want this to be a long-running, ongoing series, and we think the design is great of the character for sure. But my theory about how to further kind of cement the character for readers and just within the industry is like, okay, well, if I get him drawn by some big, well-known superhero artists, that kind of further legitimizes him. Yeah. That's my theory anyway. Maybe that's my own insecurities, like manifesting is like, will anyone take this seriously? Well, I don't know, but maybe if David Finch draws him, they will. And by the way, David offered on that cover. It was such a great, awesome thing for him to do. Like, didn't have to do it.
I feel like David Finch just loves doing variant covers. He does variant covers for everything.
What? He's a really great guy. Like, I've known him for a long time, and just, you know, as acquaintances or socially, and in Mexico City, like I was saying, like right before everything as things were shutting down, like he and I got to spend like quite a bit of time together, and that was really, really great. And you know, and he's a guy that, like, if he says he's going to do something, he does it. And he said he wanted to do the cover for me. And then when it came time, like, even though schedules were a little tight on some other stuff he was doing, he found a way to make it work. And all of a sudden this cover shows up in my inbox, and we were like, oh my God, like, it's David Finch drawing our guy.
All right, we should wrap up a little bit here, but before we do, I really wanted to get this other question in. I have one from Luke Lizald here. He says, question for Kyle. How am I just hearing about Radiant Black now? Is it just you putting the book together, or do you have a team? If you do have a team, how did you find them? Not to worry, Kyle. I asked my local shop to start pulling it so I won't miss a single issue, literally. So I know we touched a little bit on, you know, on the team that you've put together and all that. Now, what was the decision behind choosing to release this now? I mean, he's just hearing about it now because it was just announced.
Right. So it's good that he's heard about it already. That's actually a really good thing. Yeah. Because we announced it the day before it was then available to pre-order with your comic store. And that was on purpose. So the fact that he's already heard about it, great. My thing is, like, I've been a part of a lot of book launches over the years, work for hire as well as creator owned. And the thing about creator owned launches is that increasingly our attention span as readers and consumers is so minuscule that if you announce something and it's not available to order for a month or 2 months, like, you may as well have not announced it at all. Yeah. So we decided, I worked with Kat Salazar, who runs PR and marketing at Image, and one of my favorite people as well. And we worked to figure out, okay, what's the campaign? What's the strategy to announce this book? When are we going to do it? I also had a Kickstarter that was ending at the end of October, and I didn't want to step on toes of either project. You know, you can only really promote one thing at a time. Yeah. And so it was like, okay. And then there was the election too. We didn't want to be anywhere near the election. So, cause it was just such an unknown. So it became like, okay, when can we start running the glitch graphic teasers, which was something I just wanted to do cause it's cool, you know? And then that led to, okay, and we're going to do it with IO9 on Thursday. It'll be available to order on Friday. The press release will go out on Friday as well. So, as far as why we chose now, honestly, it was earlier. It was supposed to be November. When Ultraman got pushed back, I said, I don't want to do Radiant Black until Ultraman is out. So I knew Marvel was putting a lot of resources behind Ultraman, and I just really believe in the book as well. And I also felt like coming on the heels of Ultraman doing well, or we thought it was going to do well, and it has. Coming on the heels of that would be best for Radiant Black, because now I've got Power Rangers led to Ultraman, Ultraman leads to Radiant Black. Like, it's a clear narrative with retailers. The other thing is that retailers tend to order based on what your previous work sold. So I've given this advice to other creators as well. Like, be careful with where you're doing your creator-owned books. If you're going to do a book at Image, but you also are doing creator-owned stuff at, say, Aftershock. Aftershock books launch at this is no disrespect or judgment on Aftershock, but predominantly Aftershock books launch at considerably lower numbers than a lot of Image books launch at. So if you launch an Aftershock book, or any publisher, Vault or Black Mask or any of these the smaller publishers, even Boom, if you launch a book there and it does, let's say it launches at 3,000 copies, and then you're going to launch an Image book, 6 months later, be careful, because some retailers will base their orders for your new Image book on what your last creator-owned book sold, which would be one that launched at 3,000 copies, right? So I was taking that lesson to heart with regards to this subgenre. So like my Power Rangers work launched very, very well. Ultraman we thought was going to launch very, very well, and it did. And so I thought, okay, even though those are not creator-owned, they're the same subgenre that Radiant Black is iterating from. And let's see if that leads to some momentum for Radiant Black. And I don't know. We don't know yet. But that's why we're doing it now. And I also think, I think we're in a good spot with regards to, everything else going on in the industry. I mean, Future State and King in Black are both wrapping up. At Marvel and DC, their events are both wrapping up just as Radiant Black is launching. So I don't know what the status quo is going to be at Marvel or DC, but historically, coming out of an event, status quos tend to change. Yeah. And sometimes it can be, really exciting. Other times it can be a little confusing. Other times it can be both. So I just know that Radiant Black is like this, start fresh. It starts down the middle. It's easy to get into, hopefully it's relatable, and hopefully it touches on some things that maybe some other superhero books aren't touching on at that moment. And if that happens, I think we'll be in a pretty good place.
Well, I think the reception has been pretty awesome from what I've seen. And I mean, we love the first 2 issues, so we're really excited. I mean, I can't wait.
I mean, I'll say it too, just you showed us a few other small things here and there too, and just from the little that we've seen, the first 2 issues were great, but it goes so much deeper even after that, and it's so well thought out that from just the little that we've seen.
Yeah, any of our listeners know that we like some good world building. So
yeah, it's so well thought out, and it goes so deep. It's good to. I'm glad that we know about this now, and that we're talking about this now, and that we're starting out on the ground floor of this, and we're going to be able to start with issue 1, because we weren't able to do that with Invincible. I started issue 41. So, and I have full confidence that this is going to be the next big thing, and I'm pumped for it.
Well, before we wrap, then let me throw it back to you guys. A question for you all. Has there been any sort of surprise for you since Invincible, the comic series, wrapped? As far as I'm sure you went through a phase of what do we do with the podcast? What do we,
we're still in that state.
what do we even just do with our fandom of this thing that is going away? Certainly the animated series coming out. We're all very excited for that. Yeah. I'm excited as a fan, but I also had not considered until a fellow creator friend mentioned to me the other day. They're like, yeah, your stuff is there to be mainlined by people who like Power Rangers and people who are going to fall in love with the Invincible animated series. I had not even considered that the Invincible animated series could actually bring attention to the Radiant Black comic. Yeah. In addition to all of the old Invincible traits, for sure. But what have you guys found as far as your kind of path through the ending of the book, and what the kind of next horizons for you all look like?
I feel like that's something that we're always kind of chasing. I think the 3 of us can agree we've never read anything that to that level of Invincible. There's other things that we read individually. I love anything by Donny Cates.
Oh yeah.
We read a little bit of that. Obviously Kirkman, we read almost everything Kirkman, but nothing's really hit like Invincible has, in my opinion. You guys can speak for yourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, I mean, we also really enjoy a lot of the things that Skybound's been putting out, and you know, they've done Stillwater recently. I've been reading those. I just caught up on that actually. But I mean, other than picking up a few new comics here and there, as far as what to do with that fandom, I mean, like other than the animated series, it's you know, we've been exploring ways to keep that alive, whether it be filming trivia shows together or making games out of it, or just finding new people to introduce it to. And honestly, if Kirkman and Image or Skybound were like, you know what, that's it, that was the story we wanted to tell, and we would have been like, that is that thing that we can put on a shelf and be you know, fans forever with. But it's something that, you know, we probably wouldn't have kept the podcast going much longer if that were the case. But you know.
It's to tell too, like when you talk about like and I'm sure you know this, obviously being the main writer on Power Rangers and building that brand, is Invincible has its own very tight-knit community that keeps it going itself, like just like I'm sure the Power Ranger community has, and that helps us keep our podcast going, because people still want, it's so good that people still want to talk about it, and they still want to, you know, keep it alive.
I think I remember when they announced it that it was ending, we're like, fuck, like, of course, you know what I mean? And we kind of had just started the podcast.
Yeah, it was less than a year in.
Yeah, and we're like, oh, well, you know, fuck us, right? We don't matter. But I think what's nice and what's kind of humbling is that, and we've had this conversation a lot, and I think we've had it on the air too, is that we don't necessarily know when this is going to end. Like, if our podcast ends, it's going to end naturally. And I think that's why, like, I like being a part of the show, and why I like our fans like it so much, is that it's just a natural progression. Like, we have something to say, so we're going to record it. You know what I mean? And when we don't really have anything else to say, I don't think we're necessarily going to be grasping at straws to find, you know, like what you said, like, you know, squeeze the fucking blood from a stone. Like, when it happens, it happens. And
when we have nothing to say, there's going to be somebody out there that does have something to say.
Yeah,
sure,
yeah, absolutely. Well, which is kind of what happened today. I mean, we're at a point where we finished our reread of the series. We spent over a year rereading by, you know, floppies, the trades, the entire series. We switched from bi-weekly to monthly. I mean, we've done things to kind of just keep it alive, and obviously every couple months Skybound will say something about the animated series, or there's still a movie happening maybe. I mean, there's all these things that are still out there, but then someone like you comes along and it's like, hey, I want to talk about Invincible, you know, and then and this happens.
It's all about spreading the good word of Invincible,
right? Absolutely.
Right.
So comes out in February.
Comes out in February. Final order cutoff is in, I think it's January 18th. And what that means is, like, that's the final day to tell your store, hey, I want to order this, because it's the final day for them to get their orders in. The store's orders are what determine the print run, and they determine the sales on a first issue, on every issue actually. Yeah. But, you know, obviously first issue is important, and we're trying to launch strong. So you'll be seeing a lot more ramp up from us too over the next few weeks, and certainly as we get closer to that final order cutoff, we have some really big stuff planned that we're going to be rolling out as well. So you can follow that through the Twitter and Instagram accounts are at Radiant BLK, and then we also have a website that Michael built that has a really sick Easter egg that someone finally found, but it took quite a while. And this is super nerdy, but I was so excited when this happened. We have a really fun URL for that. A couple years ago, whoever is in charge in the world of like domains and shit like that, they opened it up so you could do stuff, you know, beyond .com and .net and .org and stuff like that. Yeah. So one of the things that was available was .black. So our website is actually just radiant.black. That's
cool.
So if you go to that, you can keep up on all sorts of any of the press, any of the blurbs, the like praise from other creators. You'll also see the social accounts. There's also a preview of issue 1 that's up there right now. All the covers, the ordering information. We're going to have more direct links through Comic Hub and Comixology of ways to directly order. like electronically. That's actually one of the really hard parts about monthly print comics is there's still no great way to give someone a link over the internet where they click on it and they can buy the book from a comic book store. Yeah. But we're, big supporters of the direct market and of comic book, of brick and mortar stores. And so we want to make sure that we're driving people there to the extent that we're able to. So, a Find My Comic Store link is up there right now. Comic Hub does have a service that allows more direct engagement with stores to order as a consumer. But they have a limited number of stores that participate, I guess. So I'm still sorting all that out. But Radiant.Black and the social accounts are probably the best way, the best avenues to keep up on what's going on with this book before it even comes out.
Yeah. And as you teased earlier, the social might have a little bit more to it than just being a social media account.
Yeah, for sure. So, that's a fun thing.
Might definitely be worth following along then.
I would definitely follow it.
Yeah.
And that was something that took me a little while to get my head around because I was like, is it only going to exist in universe? Is it going to only be a PR tool? Like, what is it? Yeah. And I found a way where it's like, I don't have to be that rigid. Like, it can exist in universe when we need it to.
Cool.
Which means if maybe there's some tweets that are going to show up in the book, maybe those tweets will end up on the actual Twitter account a few days before the book comes out. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Kyle, thank you so much. This has been a blast. This was so much fun.
Oh, my pleasure. Are you kidding? Like, this was... Yeah, I've been sitting on The Secret for so long, and the fact that it coincides so nicely with Invincible and like my new kind of found discovery of this awesome thing I love, it just worked out so awesome.
And just that cherry on top, that quote from Robert Kirkman, like literally on the top of the poster, is just, I mean, a superhero comic for anybody missing Invincible. Like, come on.
Well, and that's the whittled down version of the quote. The full quote is like super amazing. And you can go to the... Yeah.
Will you share it? I was going to say.
Yeah, because it's we put it up on the website. Here, I'll read it.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to wrap this up, is what Robert Kirkman said about it.
All right. These are not my words. These are Robert Kirkman's words. So, Radiant Black is the perfect superhero comic for anyone missing Invincible, or anyone who hated Invincible, or anyone who never read Invincible. It's just the perfect superhero comic for anyone, especially anyone who enjoys the newness of an original superhero comic, not bogged down by decades of continuity. Fall in love with superheroes again. Read Radiant Black.
That's awesome.
There you go.
Wow.
That's great. Thank you again, man. It can't get any better of a way to end it than that.
Oh, thanks, guys. Until next time.
Yeah. And we're back. Thank you again, Kyle. That was so much fun. I hope everybody listening enjoyed it. Now we're going to move on to...
I know I did, Ryan.
Now we're going
to... Me too.
We're going to move on to the other stuff. What kind of movies, games, TV shows, other comics that we've been reading? We just talked a lot about comics. So what about shows? Have you guys been watching Mandalorian?
Yes, I'm caught up. Not with today's episode. So we're recording right now on Thursday.
Yeah, so tomorrow's episode.
What was last week's episode called?
The Jedi.
The Jedi. Mm-hmm. So that's what we've all watched, I think.
Yeah. So no spoilers, of course.
Not all. That is my next one that I need to watch.
Okay, so you're that episode.
Yeah.
So it might be. I don't think you'd be crazy in saying that it's the best piece of Star Wars content out there. I love it. It's so good. It's just great. I don't know.
I think the problem that I'm having with it is that the entire show is starting to feel like pandering, where it is like, here's this person from this show and here's this person from this show. It's like, but I don't care. Like, I just want a cool story, an original story, about something that I haven't seen. So the fact that it's starting to become convoluted with like all these other fucking characters from all these other like side stories and the Clone Wars and fucking Rebels and stuff, I don't really care about that. That being said, I didn't really think that the last episode was the best one, like everyone else is talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. I mean, I like the pandering because I think it's done very well, and it is kind of rewarding for anyone that has watched those shows, which I did. And so I feel like, it's worth it. I agree with you, though, in saying that I would love a Star Wars story that has absolutely nothing to do with anyone else that we've seen in that wide universe. But years ago, I've kind of accepted that Star Wars is a small universe, and they're going to keep telling the stories that tie together for the most part. But I've been really enjoying it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
TJ is muted or something.
Yep. Can't hear you, TJ.
Oh, sorry, I coughed, so I muted
Oh,
myself.
there you go.
Forgot to unmute myself. I will watch it, and we'll talk about it maybe on the Oblivion Song podcast.
Cool.
Good.
Queen's Gambit is amazing. I kept hearing a lot about it from various podcasts or shows and everything like that. Decided to start watching it. Katie and I did, and I hate that I'm not watching it right now. It's one of those shows where I wish we could just binge it. It's very, very, very good. Either of you watch it?
No, but it is literally next on my list. Like, I'm probably going to start it tonight.
Yeah,
because I've heard the same thing.
Liz watched it, and she watched it in like fucking a day. Like,
right.
I don't know. I thought it was a movie. That's how quick she watched it.
That's funny.
And she's like, I'm gonna watch this thing, and then she did. She loved it just as much.
It's great.
I watched something that is not getting nearly enough attention.
What's that?
It's a show on Amazon Prime called Wayne.
Dude, shut the fuck up. I was gonna say that I watched Wayne. Go ahead.
It's awesome. It's very,
fucking
very good.
awesome.
Literally, like, I live alone, and I sit here and I'm laughing out loud, like, constantly. Like, it's so funny, and like it's everything we like in one of those like real good like feel good shows, like where it's funny but it's also very emotional, and it
has a lot of heart.
The characters are so fucking like ridiculously unique. Like, you've never seen a show with characters like this before. You know what I mean? Like,
have
it's
you?
Awesome.
Right.
I just finished
TJ,
that.
Did you finish it?
I'll check it out.
Oh yeah, I finished it like a couple days ago. Like
so me and Liz finished it like a week and a half ago. And we watched it. So we watched the first like 3 episodes, and then the next day we just fucking stayed up until 2 and just watched all of them, because it started to get to the point to where like you had to watch the next one. Like, you have to. Yeah. TJ, the fucking brothers. There's twin brothers in it. They are the funniest thing.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah, it's Ryan. It's really cool. And what sucks is that it was originally a YouTube show. It was on their like the YouTube TV or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the show came out in 2019, and Amazon picked it up and released it November 5th.
It was on YouTube Red or whatever.
Yeah. And it ends like on a cliffhanger, pretty much. Not a cliffhanger.
Do you think it's
but like
gonna get more?
Dude, I think
hope so.
I don't think Amazon would have picked it up
If they didn't. Yeah.
If they didn't have intention to, because I did a bunch of research on it because I fucking love the show so much that the viewership on it was insane.
Yeah.
Go to Rotten Tomatoes. The critic and the user reviews are awesome on it. You should watch it.
Maybe we'll watch that after Queen's Gambit.
It's very good.
Have you watched anything else lately?
No,
I will say, I feel like the number of movies I've watched in 2020, I could count on one hand. I feel like just because how busy Katie and I have been, obviously we got a puppy. I have no time for more than like an hour and a half. So like movies are very rare, so there's just, and it stinks. Like, I feel like this section on the show notes here have said nothing for movies for the last several months. And I hate it. You know what I mean? Like, I hate that we can't see movies anymore. I hate that movies aren't coming out anymore. And I'm starting to really feel the fatigue of not having movies and having that experience. I don't know.
I watched Super Intelligence on HBO Max. That was just okay. Did you guys watch Love and Monsters? Which was...
No, but that's also on my list. I want to see that too. It
was really, really good. Yeah. Like, it's... I think for what it is, like, it was a surprise. Like, it was a huge... It came out of nowhere. And, yeah, I think that's a great movie.
Right.
But... I mean, other than that, honestly, I started watching Entourage again. Do you guys remember how good Entourage is?
I feel like I remember really liking it. I feel like it wouldn't hold up.
It does.
Oh, I think it would.
It does.
I think it would.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time in forever,
First time in forever.
Yep. I couldn't watch a movie. TJ, that movie that you recommended that I tried, I just could not get through it. And I very rarely, if ever, have ever stopped a movie after giving it that much time.
What movie?
This was the movie that I recommended because it's by the same writer-director as Ryan's favorite movie, which is
Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's called I'm thinking of Ending Things. The whole movie is extremely awkward, and Ryan doesn't like awkward.
Like beyond. Like I could I was so uncomfortable, Bill. I couldn't even at one point I was like, okay, let me ride it out. I'll be on my phone or something and it'll be on, but I'll still kind of pay attention. And then it was to the point where I'm like, I can't even do that. I can't even have this on. It was making me so uncomfortable in my own skin. Like it was almost, it's genius. It's probably an amazing movie because it's able to accomplish that. So if you're able to handle that, give it a try, but I could not.
So here's the thing. There is this movie. So Ryan, like you always said, like I remember you said you hated Superbad because it's awkward. You don't like awkwardness. It's like
that's like your thing. That's nothing
awkward,
compared to this.
Right? No.
That's like goofy comedy
but
awkward.
This movie is supposed to, and there's a reason why it's supposed to. It's supposed to make you feel. It's supposed to make the normal person feel awkward. So you already like don't like regular awkward, and it like heightens that even more. So I understand why you don't like it. But
I think that
it's a movie I would never watch again.
Yeah. Sometime I think that
how it comes together in the end.
I was gonna say I think I'd like for you to spoil it for me sometime because I am curious, but I just cannot, man. Bill, I want you to watch like 10 minutes just to know.
I don't do well with that kind of stuff. Like if it's what I'm thinking it's gonna make me feel like the movie Whiplash makes me feel stage fright. Like it makes me feel anxious.
That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Like when he's on stage and he's fucking it up, I'm like, I'm gonna throw up. Like, or when I'm watching, Liz watches The Voice, and when someone's doing really, really fucking terrible, I have to go in the other room.
Yes, like absolutely.
I'm not gonna watch that fucking movie.
So it's something like that. But imagine you're in the car with someone, and it's just an awkward conversation. Like they say something, and there's the long pause. And it's just like.
But Ryan, the whole intro of them in the car, I thought was brilliant. I loved that.
Again, I can appreciate it.
The dialogue was so good. The dialogue was so good.
Is it this level of uncomfortable? Like because I did this in real life. About last week, I had a customer come in. It was the first time she'd ever come into my store. I sold her something and I gave her a really good deal. And she was walking out and she's like, "Billy, you're the man." And I was like, "You're the woman," like that. And like my coworkers were in the back room and they're like, "Oh no," and I'm like,
that's like the grown awkwardness, like like what's her face performing on SNL, and it's like, oh,
this is like we're supposed to like
Ashley Simpson.
We're supposed to like be in love, but I don't know how to act around you.
Yeah,
it's like a weird like I don't know. Like it's hard to explain.
Okay, I gotta stop thinking about it. What about some video games? I've been playing a ton of video games.
Oh, yeah, you got a PlayStation 5, didn't you?
I did. I got a PlayStation 5 for my birthday. Katie got me one as an early birthday present. I loved Astrobot on it. I thought that was a great introduction to the system and a great celebration of all things PlayStation. And I started playing Bugsnax on it. I have not gotten Miles Morales yet, but that'll probably be my next one. Otherwise, just been playing like Tony Hawk Pro Skater on it still, as well as jumping into Avengers every now and then. We got the Kate Bishop content that'll be out in a week or so. But other than that, I have been absolutely in love with Hades on Nintendo Switch. It is just exactly my kind of game. I love things like Rogue Legacy or Steamroll Dig or like Hollow Knight or really cool like roguelike kind of games, and I also love Greek mythology, so this game was just right up my alley, and it's been a ton of fun. It's so smart, the music's incredible, the gameplay is amazing, the story is awesome, the visuals are so good. It's just one of those like perfect package kind of games. And it just is so addictive too. So addictive. I literally got a PS5 and I find myself trying to split my time between that and a PS5. Like it's so much fun.
Wow.
So yeah.
I did play and beat Miles Morales. I will go on the record without spoiling anything, Ryan, that from a gameplay standpoint, I had more fun playing Miles Morales. It is, in my opinion,
that's kind of what I've been hearing.
Spider-Man game.
People are saying
It's
they took what they learned from the first one, and we're like, let's just like make it into a little bit of a shorter, more condensed, better version, just more. Yeah, no
I could have
fluff.
played it, dude. You know how like Arkham, like when Arkham Asylum came out, I could just play the fight rooms over and over and over again. I get like combos of like 200 plus.
Yeah.
That I fucking love the combat in this. It's so much more intuitive.
Oh,
Ryan,
I'm so
you're
excited,
gonna fucking
man.
love it, dude.
I'm so
You're gonna
excited.
love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
TJ?
One thing I have been reading is Ready Player 2 came out.
Oh shit! I have not read that yet.
It got really bad reviews, TJ.
Did it?
Yeah. IGN gave it like a 4.
Oh, I wouldn't. No way.
How far
No
into
way.
it are you? Percentage?
Well, I'm 2/3 in.
Okay.
Almost exactly, because there's 30 chapters and I'm on 20.
And you're enjoying it?
I love it. I think
cool.
it's really good. It's not, obviously it's not as good. I would agree that it's not as good as the first one.
I know.
However, go ahead.
I was just about to say, I know the criticisms that the first one gets, and I understand the criticisms, and I can totally see that. It's one of those things where it's just kind of dumb entertainment for me, so I enjoyed it.
So this, I can understand if people don't like it, they're not into a certain thing, because this book dives very deep into like a genre of something very specific that happened in the 80s. And if you don't like that, if you're not like a fan of that thing, I don't want to say what it is, then you're probably not going to like it, because they spend like
A lot of
10
time
chapters. It's like not that this was in the first book, because it wasn't, but for anybody that saw the Ready Player One movie, let's say like the Shining scene.
I knew you were going to say
Imagine you've never seen Shining, and that's like
a third of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I mean, so it's not one specific movie, but it's multiple of like one genre. Yeah. So I'm a fan of that thing, so I'm enjoying it.
Cool.
Yeah, but Ryan, I think that you would also enjoy it.
Okay, good. I'll check it out. I'm still really enjoying, like, surprised at how much I'm enjoying Walking Dead Deluxe. It's just been so long since I've read those early issues, and reading the behind the scenes in the back was really cool. I didn't know this at one point. I want to say it's in issue 4 when they see the tank in Atlanta. There's all the bodies around it. One of them is Isotope from Invincible, because it's someone that like a friend of Robert Kirkman's. So he based the character off of this guy. He owned a comic book shop, I believe, named Isotope Comics. So he named a character after him in Invincible, and he's a dead body in that on that splash page and in Walking Dead. Cool things like that. But just like the behind the scenes of him writing it, and obviously it in color is pretty cool. So been really enjoying Walking Dead Deluxe. Got caught up on Stillwater.
Me too. Wait,
Yeah.
unless
Did
a
you
new
read
issue
it
didn't
all?
come out, did it?
3 issues.
I'm caught up.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, the third one ends with the newscast, right? With his, I don't want to spoil it. I'm all caught up.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really cool. It's going some cool places. I like the direction it's going in.
Yes.
I am probably most excited to read that week to week currently, or
Yeah.
month to month currently.
I would agree with you. Like, I'm very
More so than
Not crossover.
Firepower.
Firepower. I read as well.
I did not. I'm not caught up.
And I am more excited for Stillwater just because I'm interested. Like, I'm super interested to see like what they can do with this story. Like, I guess I'm more interested to see like how long they can take it. You know, like
I have to take that back though, because like I like Stillwater because, like I said last time, it reads like a book. Like, it doesn't feel like a comic. However, I'm probably more excited for crossover. I can't wait for
Dude, I'm so excited for crossover issue 2. I'm really excited to find out whether or not it was just issue 1 that really hooked me, or if they can keep this momentum.
Donnie Cates tweeted today, and he said, "Retailers, I'm not one to yank your chain. Issue 3 and issue 6 are going to be." I think he said 3. It may have been 4. Actually, I think it was 4. Issue 4 and issue 6 are going to sell out.
Cool. Oh my God, dude! If they actually succeed with what they're like leading to in that book, it's crazy.
They didn't. I guess you know what. I'm gonna give it a chance. I'm gonna give it to issue 2 because if they keep up with this vague, if they keep up with this vague, like, is it supposed to be Superman kind of thing, I'm not gonna be interested anymore. He dresses like a spider. I wonder if that's Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know. We'll see because I don't know. It's such an interesting concept. I'm not really sure how they're gonna be able to do it, but
right.
One thing that have been reading for the last several months but didn't really want to bring up on the show was I was obviously reading a shit ton of Power Rangers to gear up for the Cal Higgins chat. So I read all of those, at least his entire run. TJ, I know you've been reading that as well.
Yeah, and it's great.
And what else? Obviously, we read the first couple issues of Radiant Black, which you've heard us talk a lot about already on this episode.
Mm-hmm. A lot.
I feel like
if you're honestly, like, I got a shout out to anybody that's listening, all of our listeners right now. If you're still listening to this, God bless you.
Yeah, because
how did you make it?
This is definitely it. So let's wrap it up because again, they have been listening for a while now. So this does it for 2020. We'll be back in a month for our first episode. We're going to look back at 2020 like we have been doing for the last couple of years in our little annual look back episode. But I'm kind of glad we're here at the end at 2020 here. Wish everybody obviously a happy holiday, Merry Christmas. But
don't go to any get-togethers.
Yeah, be safe, everybody. Be safe. If you want to write into the show, you can reach us at theinvinciblepodcast@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're hearing this outro song right now, it is by our friend Wyatt Layne. The title of the song is called The Wave Returns. You can find his music over on Soundcloud, Apple Music, Spotify, and he does some really great stuff. Thank you, Wyatt, for helping us out and letting us use your music at the end of these episodes. So that does it. We hope you all enjoyed not only this episode, but all of our stuff in 2020. We've got an exciting 2021 coming up, I think. I mean, we all have some expectations for 2021, and I think it's going to be great. So have a good night, guys. I will talk to you later.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye. everybody, and welcome to the Invincible Podcast.
I didn't know you were going to start like all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I didn't think you were going to put so much emphasis on the word "to," though.
I didn't like.
It was only been like a minute. Why not just start over? It's going to be easier.